You got them all.
Yeah.
Happens when they bite into it too much.
That crumb right there is.
Okay, I call our session to order. I'd like to welcome everyone to the study session portion of the meeting of the Canyons Board of Education. Today is November 1st, 2022, and we are meeting at the district office located at 9361 South, 300 East in Sandy, Utah. And first item on our study session this evening is item 2A, possible elementary school grading term adjustment. So I will turn the time over to Dr. McKay Robinson, Elementary School Performance Director.
Thank you, President Tingy. Board members, appreciate the opportunity. I actually had a really fabulous joke prepared for you, but literally moments ago, Leon pulled me aside and said, "I'm the only joke teller in this district." Then he threatened my salary, so I'm going to hold to that. I'm not share any jokes or anything in that. But I am very grateful for this opportunity to talk about elementary schools and then specifically the possibility of making some adjustments to grading terms. And so wanted to give you a little bit of background and explain why we're even having this conversation in the first place, where this all came about and everything. But several weeks ago, probably even months ago, Dr. Robbins in our cabinet meeting had basically challenged everyone on cabinet to do all that we could and to problem solve and find some things that we could possibly remove from our wonderful teachers' plates and try and ease the burden that is upon them at this particular time. That then led to several discussions with administrators, with teachers. Myself and Alex actually met with a few of our CEA reps on a couple different occasions, and we just kind of began kind of this problem-solving process of looking at some of the different options that are there. One of the main options is one of those things that continues to rear its head every single year, but for whatever reason, we forget about it after it passes, or we're not thinking about it before it gets to that point. And that is essentially that we have that wonderful grading day for our teachers to spend their day putting all their report cards together, the grading and everything on January 12th, 13th, 14th, depending on the year. And that does not necessarily align with our current trimester system because the semester actually ends clear on February 29th. So that day doesn't really provide them that opportunity to put all their report cards together. It just becomes a day of planning and different things in that regard. It's certainly not a wasted day by any means, but it's not meeting the purpose of that grading day. And therefore they have to spend that time figuring out when to do those on their own dime and own time, if that makes sense. And then we have that parent teacher conference, which is February 28th. So you can see that there's quite a big window there from the grading day to the actual report card. And then it's essentially that other information that's there that I've already kind of touched on. So there's some of the background and the reasoning for us looking at this and discussing this a little bit further. So hopefully yes, please.
Sorry, I just want to point out, to go back to the previous slide, that we do give them 2 full days of pay that we intended them to work on their report cards. So I'm just like, when you say there's no time to work on the report cards, I just want to clarify we are paying them to.
Correct.
But not in the calendar.
Correct. The difference is that we have those 3 different grading or reporting times. And so 2 of those days are addressing those other, but this one doesn't align with the actual grading day. So it'd be kind of just.
And I do understand that, but you said we expect them to do it on their own dime, and we do not expect that.
Totally.
It is not listed.
Just on our own time.
Okay. Not listed on the calendar.
Yes, I know.
So this, when I first met with board leadership to kind of go through this and give an initial proposal, it was requested that I try and make this as visual as possible. So here's my first attempt at making it visual. So let me explain really quickly the colors. So the top in the blue is the first trimester, the black is the second, red is the third trimester. So that's what's behind that. The big blue highlighted areas there, the column or the rows that are there, that is to address what I was talking about earlier, where our January date does not align with the actual grading dates. That's kind of that weird window of time where things are kind of spread out in an awkward and weird time. So that's what it looks like currently in our trimester. And this is what it could look like within our, if we were to shift to quarters. Same thing, blue first quarter, black second quarter, red third, fourth in the blue. And this would allow for, you can notice here that this would allow us to align with our actual grading date. And then on report cards or whatever we determine, SCP or whatever would be able to be sent home at that particular time. So that's kind of in a nutshell what that could look like if we were to shift to that. So one of the main questions is, how would this impact our calendar? So I took our approved 2023-24 calendar and basically broke this far right side that lists all the days and what they're actually intended for, and put them into two columns here on this next slide, and then highlighted the areas that would be a necessary impact or would require us to change. You will notice that they are very minimal in many instances. So that first one, we would simply change from end of first quarter from 6 to 12 to K-12. We would eliminate the line that says trimester. Next thing, same thing, we would change that to K-12, eliminate trimester, and then K-12. So you'll notice it really doesn't impact the rest of the calendar. Parent-teacher conferences would stay the same. And then we would just simply be aligning with our secondary schools on that quarter. So not a major impact. I will highlight it.
Most of the, most of the secondary.
Yeah, I was just gonna highlight this, again, does not apply to our Brighton school situation there. So again, you're gonna see this a lot. I tried to keep going back and forth to summarize because there's multiple slides, a lot of different changes or dates and everything in that regard. So you can see what the impacts are. We touched on those a little bit already. But how does this address the challenge that we were given by Dr. Robin? It does align that grading day. The teachers would no longer need to find those 8 hours to put that in, to put their report cards together and whatnot. And then we'll talk about a few more of those possible benefits as we move into the other slide. So that does, if we were to move to this, it does require us to look at our grading or reporting process that we already currently have in place. Sorry, Dan. So that's where this goes into. And I wanted to start off by first sharing with you what we have already in place. First and foremost, we have what is referred to as our SEP, or our Elementary Student Education Plans. And that is what takes place during our very first parent-teacher conference currently, early in, well, the end of September, essentially, around the 27th, 28th. And the teacher sits down with the child as well as the parent. They talk about the strengths and all the accomplishments that the child has had up until that point, as well as areas for improvement. And then they set some goals for the remainder of the year and that next grading period. We do this a second time later in the year. Well, that's currently what our SEP looks like. And that's what it is when I'm referring to our SEPs. Okay. The next is an example of one of our elementary report cards. You'll notice that they have 3 reporting periods on the report card currently. That progress report, period 1, 2, and then the end of year summary. So that is what the 2 tools are that we are using to share progress currently. Please.
Sorry, okay, just in looking at the presentation, I just want to be clear for my own understanding. Option 1, is that currently what we're doing? Like, I'm just trying to wrap my head around. Okay, do we have an example of currently what we're doing?
It's coming right here.
Okay, that is option 1. That's what I'm saying. Okay.
But I put at the top of every option what we currently are doing and then what we're proposing at the bottom.
Okay.
So great clarification. So currently, the way we have that, just to answer that question, is at the beginning, we have that student education plan that takes place on the 27th to the 28th, roughly. And then, and I say roughly because it depends on which year you're looking at. And then we have that report card that goes home on the 17th of November. So one of the reasons why I want to highlight that as well is from September 27th and 28th, when we're setting goals and talking about the progress that's been made, there's really not a large window between that 27th and 28th, November 17th for a grade or to show a lot of growth and progress of that I'm thinking of a different thing. Sorry, Clarion, thank you for saying that. So there's that particular piece. That's the first 2. And then we have trimester 2. And the blue again is what we were trying to address, where we have the progress report February 29th. And we have a student education plan again, and then the end of year summary. So what you'll see here is the way we currently have it is we have 2 SEPs and then 3 report cards. Does that make a little bit more sense, Amanda? Okay, so that's what we have. So now in quarters, the proposal, and this would be option number one. We would do that initial parent-teacher conference in September, which is already on the calendar. And we would discuss that student education plan. Then quarter two comes around, which would end on January 16th. You'll notice that it aligns beautifully with that January 12th grading day. So our teachers would have the ability to utilize that day and put all the grades together and then send that report card home. Quarter three, then you move into a possible, again, these are the possibilities of what we could do, a progress report that would then be discussed at parent-teacher conference. And then at the very end of the year, we would send another report card home. So this would essentially be one SCP, 3 report cards. Okay, now a summary of that will be coming again. Clarify.
Wait. Why would you not do another SCP on quarter 3
There.
at that parent conference?
One of the reasons is, again, we're looking at possibilities of removing another piece from our teachers' plates and still maintaining 4 reporting periods, but removing one more requirement from them to help minimize the time commitment to put all this together, as well as just the overall stress of it all.
So you're only gonna meet with the parents one time,
Nope.
No, it's still twice.
still twice.
McKay, help me understand this a little bit. If they do an SCP at the beginning of the year and establish what their goals are, and then that's the only SCP they do all year, is education better if we review that mid-year? Or is education worse if we review it mid-year?
That's a really great question.
Because I'm trying to figure out what's gonna give us the best product for education. It just seems to me that if we reevaluate that SCP mid-year,
Yeah.
there could be some benefits.
And that's again why we have multiple options here. And one does include a second SCP. But I would also like to say that our teachers could obviously attest to this as well. Regardless of the reporting period that's taking place, they're discussing that at length in the elementary with the progress that's being made and talking about goals and everything moving forward. Regardless of how we specifically outline that, whether it's the SCP or the actual report.
Except that when you have to do these report cards and you have to do the SCPs, it's not like, oh, I can open up my grade book and here's where they are in the grading system. They have to go through all this testing and they have to go through figuring out, and I know. So part of my question is, we don't have learning skills here, right? Per se, like we have the quizzes and the exit tickets and things like that, but the learning skills where it says, if they're doing this, this is scale 1 and this is a grade 1. And if they're doing this, this is scale 2 and it's a grade 2. And if they're doing these things, it's a scale 3. We have either it's 80% and above and you have mastered it, or it's 80% and below and you haven't mastered it. So you either get a 3 or you get a 2 and 1. And so when you're talking SCPs and you're talking report cards, and this is the confusing part about standard-based grading, because it's 2 different identities. What one looks like and what the other looks like are 2 different whole stories. And when I'm looking at wanting to talk to parents and explain to them what's happening, I really want to have all my data in place with my report card in place to match my data with my report card for those parents, rather than have an SCP that says, hey, your kid's doing kind of great. And here's some of the things we can work on. Although I know on that SCP, you guys are waiting for data and you're giving them data, right? And then a report card, you turn around and give them just the grades. But maybe the teachers are explaining the report card to them, but actually not, because when we do parent conferences here, our parent conference does not line up with our report cards at any given time. So the report cards goes home with no explanation from the teacher unless the parent really wants to dig into it and try to find out about it. No explanation from the teacher about why they got on their report card either, and I'm sorry, it's kind of like a pass-fail thing, whether the 80% or above or the 80% or below. And the kids don't even know why on their report card they have a 3 or a 2 or a 1. So this is the thing that I was trying to go through here and try to figure out was I know we're trying to take things off the teacher's plate, but it just seems to me that if you're gonna do this, you should align the SEP and report card at the same time with the SEP and report card at the same time, at the same place, and not have them staggered everywhere. But let's go through all the options and then I'll tell you what I finished thinking.
Fair enough. That works. So again, that's kind of that option number one piece. Option number two, again, just the trimester, what we currently have in place up at the top. Option two would be taking that SCP at the very beginning of the year, the progress report or report card on that January 2nd or 12th aligns there. And then SCP, again, the second time to discuss kind of that revisit month that you were referring to. And then having the end of year summary at the very end of the year, which is that report card. So again, it's still 4 reporting periods, but it's an SCP, progress report, SCP, progress report.
That one makes a little more sense.
So then option number 3, same type of thing. Progress report, progress report, progress report, end of year summary, basically eliminating the SCP component or side of things. 4 reporting periods, but just all report cards. So again, and mastery report card, whatever, progress report, whatever you'd like to refer to it as. So then what I did is try to break them down and kind of give you a quick little summary as to what each option entails. We've already discussed the majority of the bullets here, but you will notice that it doesn't necessarily remove anything from our special education teachers, but it does remove one student education plan or SEP from the gen ed teachers plate. So we're meeting our gen ed teachers' needs in that regard, but it doesn't necessarily hit the special education component of it. This does, again, we're talking about some of these others that we've already mentioned, how it aligns with specific conferences and everything in that regard. Second one, 2 SCPs, 2 SCP progress reports. It does align with that day. The SEP, and I apologize, I didn't get that date changed in the previous one. It would require us to make a minor modification to the progress report itself, meaning we would eliminate one of the columns, so there would just be the 2 columns on there. It does remove something from the special ed teachers' plates, as well as remove something from the teachers' plates. So we're kind of in a win-win in that regard. The third option, again, all 4 report cards, it does add to the special ed teachers' plate, but does remove 2 SCPs from the teachers, but does add an additional report card. And as Clarine had mentioned a little bit earlier, it's pulling a lot more data and trying to make sense of the 3, 2, and 1s and all that kind of stuff. So it just adds a little bit more time to the whole thing. So those are the 3. So the benefits of shifting from quarters or 2 quarters from the trimesters and aligning the grading day, but it gets us to consistency throughout the Brighton situation. No student data aligns with the actual reporting period, which then gives the teachers essentially 8 hours to actually put their report cards together. That's originally intended. A little less confusion with the parents in aligning the 2 report cards or levels, if you will. It eliminates the current deadline of completing the report card, writing an SCP, and holding parent-teacher conference within a very, very short window of time. It's pretty taxing and it's tough. Needless to say, our teachers go home completely exhausted after that short little window there. And then depending on the grading option selected, the SCPs and report cards will be streamlined to provide in the sense of so those are some of the benefits. And then again, trying to be as visual as possible, putting the 3 options there for you to take a look at again and see exactly are side by side, so you can see the differences. And again, we're maintaining the 4 grading periods or reporting periods. It's just a matter of kind of shuffling some things around, really providing them that day, the 12th/13th of January, to do their report cards, as well as removing one small piece of this to make it not as taxing and overbearing. So those are the 3 options. Open to questions, concerns, worries.
Yeah, let's let superintendent make some comments and then Amanda and then Amber.
So just to back up to McKay's opening statement, this is something that I've been discussing with CEA for a while. And in my opinion, in looking at it, it still boils down to 4 cycles of feedback. And I didn't really fully understand the level of feedback that the SEP actually gives. But between the SEP and the report cards, and McKay and Alice can speak to this, I don't see any decrease in the level of feedback or the cycles that we're providing to parents and kids. There's still 2 parent-teacher conferences. There's still 4 cycles. But as I've got into the issue, the challenge is that because of that misalignment in that day, teachers end up duplicating their work, and it's time. They are getting compensated, but really that day it's more than a month, almost a month and a half away. And so I think it just makes us more efficient, essentially. And according to the teachers that I've talked to, I haven't had any teacher tell me that they didn't support this. So in my mind, the SEP report card seems to make the most sense. But I just want everybody to know, I don't sense from what you've all told me and what I've gathered is that there's any less or quality of feedback being provided to parents.
There's constant communication that's going on as well throughout the school year. We're not limiting this to 4 different times where parents are communicating.
So anyway.
Okay, so I think we have several board member comments and questions. So Amanda, then Amber, Mont, and then Clary, and then Holly. And
So
then Steve. I guess we all have something to say.
you can, okay, so when I look at this, one of the first things I think is, wow, as a parent, not getting a report card until January feels really late to me. So perhaps you can give me a little bit more insight, not just for my benefit, but also for anyone else listening in, of what the fundamental differences are between an SEP and that report card, if we can get really granular for a second.
Sure. So within the report card, I think Clarine touched on it really well, where we're pulling a lot of data, trying to align that with whether or not we've mastered or not mastered, or we're getting close to mastery or whatever the yeah, and it's all standards based and everything in that regard. So it's different than what you're going to see on a secondary report card, obviously. Whereas the SEP itself, it's literally it can address all of those items and how they're performing and everything in that regard. But it's also getting, to me, it's almost a little bit more personal in the sense that we're truly talking about the child, not necessarily looking at a number. And I hate to even make it sound like we're not doing that with the report card, because I don't see it that way. But I've always really appreciated the SEP's side of things, because I know my son or daughter's strengths are, I know what areas we need to work on, and here's what they have established as a student as well as the teacher to try and address these specific areas. So it's a little more broad in that regard, rather than narrowing it down to whether or not we've mastered it per se. It's allowing for a little more discussion.
So, and there have been times as a parent that the SCPs have been pretty specific for my kids and really helpful, and other times it's been more. And so there's a part of me that wonders, how do we make sure that there's a standard expectation attached to SCPs? I think with report cards, a bit more objective. That's one concern I have. Another one is, does this take us a step closer or farther away from being competency-based grading? Because if that is part of our strategic plan and that's the direction we're headed, I'm a little bit worried about, how that functions. Like, what are your thoughts on it?
Speak to that.
Yeah, I'll go first. I think a bigger question with that, Amanda, is the actual tool that we use. If you go back and look at you can actually see the report card that we use. I think there's probably a bigger question on at some point, and I know we've talked about this, would be a major issue right now to go out to an RFP. We're probably not ready for that at this point because Skyward does so many different things in the district. But Amber, you can speak to this too, but we've been talking about what that tool actually can look like. We have a meeting with Skyward coming up soon, and I'm hoping that they bring their game, in this regard, because that really dictates what we're able to do. So I don't sense that this move does anything to lessen, our vision and our direction toward mastery, but I mean, to me, the tool is a bigger question than the practice. Is that a fair?
Yeah, I was going to say the same thing. I don't think it takes us away from competency based. I think if we want to go there, I was going to say something similar to Rick, that we don't have a tool right now that allows us to get as close as we, I think, outlined in the strategic plan. And that requires just the tools to be able to make it easier for people to do that. And the piece that I will add, the benefit of having this system in place is you're building so many micro skills that lead up to mastery of the standards in an elementary. And so having the opportunity in an SEP to talk about those micro skills, and then the time to describe what being on track and closer to mastery looks like on the report card that's a little bit further away, is also advantageous because you have more time to be able to teach those standards, because the standards on the report card often represent the biggest essentials and combine some of those essentials into one I can statement, which often in elementary, that first report card anyway, you just got a lot of kids that are on track because you haven't had enough time to get them to mastery. So moving that further into January, if that's the direction, that we go, you've got time.
So can I ask, like, if you have a child that has a disability, for instance, and like, I just look at this, like, if I'm a parent that has a kid with a disability, maybe hasn't been diagnosed, don't quite understand what's going on. If I'm not getting that report card until January, I feel like it's almost like too late, right? I mean, there's this part of me that's like, how are we making sure that we're catching some of those red flags early enough? And is an SCP going to really adequately do that? I mean, so that's one of my questions. The other is, I know that this is an attempt to take off some things off of the teacher's plate, and in some ways it feels like low-hanging fruit, but I just wonder whether or not it's still doing enough meaningfully, and if there's other things that we can consider or think of that make a difference. I'm just curious how many teachers have been talked to, how many of them are aware that we're having this conversation?
That's a really great question. Yeah, and yes, it is low-hanging fruit. Is there more that we could be doing? Absolutely, but this was one of the pieces of low-hanging fruit that we felt it was easy to address as quickly and as easily as possible. Like I mentioned, we've solicited the feedback and the input of the BLTs at the different schools. We spoke to the principals and asked them to talk to their teachers, and not only to necessarily talk to just their BLTs, but also just to talk to those teachers that are heavily involved in those discussions, and then our conversations with CEA as well. So I don't have an exact number, but there's been a large number, and all the principals are in full support of this as well. I think, I'm trying to remember what your first question, in regards to this student that may be receiving special services or whatever the case may be. Our special ed teachers and our classroom teachers are always monitoring how the student is doing, and quite honestly, they wouldn't be doing their job if they weren't reaching out to a parent to talk about any of the red flags that might be coming up that need to be addressed or whatever the case may be. So I don't feel like they're going to sit back and wait until a report card, because they certainly shouldn't be. And if and when that becomes an issue, then that's something that can easily be addressed with the principal and whatnot. But especially those that are receiving the services that are there during that first parent-teacher conference, the resource or the special ed teachers always make themselves available, as well as the general ed teachers. Sometimes they're with them, sometimes they just make themselves available in the office to where the parent can go and speak to them directly as well about the different supports that are being provided and what progress is or isn't being made, and what other.
So the parent-teacher conference would stay in September either way.
Correct. Yeah, that wouldn't change at all. So that's, yeah.
I'm good. All right, Amber and then Mom.
Okay, so my question, I think the superintendent answered it, is I was just gonna ask what option is the administration recommending? So you're saying option 2 is the best.
SCP report card, SCP report card.
Okay, and then I was also gonna ask who you talked to, which you already answered, so that's all I have.
Yeah, most recently, we met with all of our principals, even just this last Thursday. I went through this entire presentation with them, and it was unanimous with the option 2, just because of the way it's spread out, as well as meeting the needs of both our gen ed teachers as well as our special ed teachers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, Mom, then Clarine. Holly.
I'm glad to hear you say that most of them are looking at option two. That's the one that seems to make the most sense to me. To me, to use a sports analogy, you correct me if I'm wrong, okay? You're the resident jock here, okay?
Thank you for reminding me.
Just in case you forgot, okay? Quarterback B1, right? I got it. You
I
go
don't
into,
look like that though anymore. I don't look like Brian. We'll get to that.
go into a game. Coach sits down with the players and goes through what the game plan is. Then you go out and you execute your game plan. At the end of the half, the report card is on the scoreboard. And we could make it more efficient by just skipping halftime and not reevaluating our game plan at halftime, right?
Adjustments.
And that would be great, wouldn't it? No halftime, no time to revise the game plan. And so, I just think the SEP has to stay in place. And the main question that comes to me as you go through this, I'm totally supportive of moving them to quarterly reporting of some type. Why don't we do that on all grades at all schools, including the B word?
You can't say the B word.
That's a discussion among yourselves on that one.
Yeah, because if a quarterly reporting system is better than a trimester, or a trimester is better than quarterly, why don't we take advantage of what's the best at all schools and have uniformity district-wide?
He can't answer that because he's an employee, but you can talk to all of us about that and we can answer that.
Sticking with elementary.
I'm feeling really ambitious today.
Okay, let's see, Clarine and then Holly.
They call it the emperor's new clothes.
Sorry.
I'm
Well,
fine
we
if
do have
everyone wants
addition-
to switch to the trimester.
Hmm.
I'm fine if everyone would love to switch to the trimester.
Go, Danny.
I'm just
Are
saying.
you finished?
I'm
Sorry.
finished.
Okay. All right, Clarine and then Holly.
2 more years.
Okay, so this is from my perspective, okay. There's no difference if I had a report card. Because to do the SEP, you're gonna make the teachers do all the data that they have to do all the testing they have to do, to be able to sit down with the parent, to explain to them on their little SEP that this is where their child is, and this is what they've accomplished so far, and this is the goals we're setting. They still have to do all of that data either in Skyward, and actually they can't, because you only want them to put in the scores that you want them to put in to be able to show that they were proficient. So the teachers have to have another form or way to put all their scores in, which I now do mine on paper or I do mine on an Excel sheet or both, trying to keep track of all those kids and their scores that they're getting for the work they're doing, plus the scores they're doing for their assessments, plus the scores they're doing for exit tickets. So I can try to determine in my little brain whether those kids are proficient or non-proficient. That has to happen before that SEP. And so when you get to the report card, the same thing happens all over again. I still have to assess all those kids. I still have to look at what they've been doing in class. I still have to figure out if they've done what I needed them to do or not. Yeah, it's not written on the report card, but you still have to have the same data. And so, granted that Q1, we're just writing up a one paper that says, here's child's strengths and here's your child's not strengths, but it's still the same amount of work to get the data into there to give to the parents. You have to give the parents some information. And then, but then I guess, then they have the report card. So you don't have parent conferences, at least you're not there for 8 hours working with parents and explaining that one more time. They can look at the report card and decide what they think. The parent can look at the report card, decide what they think. And then if they think they have a problem, then they can come back to the teacher. And yes, we hope the teachers have talked to the parents, before that time, before they see the report card and have no input or understanding about how that child got those 3s, 2s, and 1s. And then we just repeat the same thing all over again. So I just have a hard time not understanding why we're not having this parent conference at the same time they're getting the report card that has the grade on, so that they can be explained to why they have that grade. Not explain to your child is good at this and your child is not so good at this, and here's the goal. Because granted, when Amber gets her child's report card, she has to look at it and go, oh, those were good grades, or look at it and go, oh, you didn't do so well, but she has no idea what happened on that report card unless you're sending home data binders, which I have to do every month, send home a data binder with all the data that I have been collecting on spelling, vocabulary, whatever, that the parents sign every month to look at all their scores to see how they're doing and what they're not doing. So I have a real hard time with teachers that are having to put certain things in Skyward, then certain things on an Excel sheet, then certain things on their book, and then trying to align it back and forth. And then we're saying we're going to try to take something off the teacher's plate. This kind of makes sense that we're having a parent conference and having a conversation and then getting a report card and then having another conversation and then getting a report card. But we're still doing the same amount of work with the same amount of data.
So if we were to go back and look at report card, that it's or less report.
Yeah, you get rid of one report card. I know.
One less time.
One thing you'll also notice, Clarine, is that the way it's currently set up is that the SEP is discussed at that very first parent-teacher conference. And then we are sending a report card home on November 17th. So that's just being sent home. It's not handed over during or discussed during a parent-teacher conference.
Right.
Then the second, same thing where a progress report is sent home again without discussion or anything in that.
I know we're doing it. I mean, I know we're doing it and we're taking one away. I just wish there was another way to do the whole system a little different. Does that make sense?
Makes perfect sense. Absolutely. We're trying to.
I mean, yes, it's streamlining it some, and it makes sense that you talk to the parents, get a report card, talk to the parents, get a report card. I'm just saying it's still the same amount of data, the same amount of work, except not to put in one more report card.
You're saying you feel like we should get away from double, triple entry. That would be a more meaningful change than just this. Is that what you're saying?
Well, that would help out. That would
See,
help out.
It's the timing of the day though. January 12th comes and they're not ready because the actual report card's a month and a half after that. I think that's,
Well, they still have to show, Rick, have to show all the data. They have to go through all the Acadience testing, and they have to go through all this different testing to come up with the data to say to the parents, it looks like your child's doing
yes,
good here, but not so much
right.
there.
I'm just saying it gives them the day of January 12th to do just that. That's what we're trying to align. Because right now they end up doing all the work you're talking about close to February, close to February 28th or 29th versus we align in quarters, then the day to do that work aligns with the report card.
So for clarification, we're really only trying to figure out how to use that date more effectively.
Well, I asked you, let's go back to the question. I asked them to bring something back to me that made us more efficient, that took something off of teachers' plates. I had been discussing this with CEA probably for a year and a half. We've at least been bouncing it around of like, what can we do with this? So that was the genesis of it. And then these were the proposals that we.
No, I agree. Proposal 2 is way better than proposal 1 and proposal 3. I mean, it's a starting point. I'm just saying that we're playing with words when we talk about what teachers have to do for SEPs and report cards.
I think to that point.
You make it more work than it is. I'm making it more work than it is. All right, I'm good.
Fair enough. Thanks.
Okay, Holly. And then Steve.
Okay, option 2, for sure,
in my opinion, looks the best because you get to refer back to the SEP. I don't know that the SEP is very valuable if you never refer back to it. As far as the way we do things that would make things a little more effective, I believe is when we have our elementary school kids and we go to parent teacher conference and we walk out with this little cute paper folder in the papers and we have our kids' goals. And then you have to keep track of that paper or take a picture of it on your phone and make sure you're helping your child reach the goal. We have Canyon Skyward and our kids, even in elementary school, are doing homework on Canyon Skyward. Can't we please put the grades and the SEP on the grade book? When you go to your elementary school child, it says nothing is available on this grade book. How nice, and actually how much more effective to work with your kids on the goals. If I can look it up on my phone in 2 seconds and say, oh, remember your goal, we have to work on math computation. Let's do that for 10 minutes a night. So that would be one way to help us actually utilize the SEP. It's very difficult to ever refer back to that SEP on a piece of paper combined with some fun artwork. You know what I mean? In a folder. In 2022, I think we ought to be able to get there with that, you know, and we can review it with the kids. So, because the SEP is only as good as if we're actually going to do something about it. So it's a lot of, right? I mean, it's wonderful for the teachers to see, okay, because they're going to work on it in class, of course. But if we want any reinforcement at home, parents need to have access quicker.
So there's great tools out there. The heart of the issue with Skyward is that it has so many tentacles in the district, right? So HR, finance, it's everywhere. And so to pull those apart, and then how, and Leon knows this better than anybody, how that information flows up and reports to the state through UTREX is also very complicated. And so it's, I mean, on the surface, you're exactly right, Holly. Like in cabinet, we've talked about this. We need a different reporting system. We need one that's compatible with Canvas, you know, better than what it is right now. They're parallel systems that don't really talk, right?
We have some update coming.
Well, I hope Skyward.
They've been talking about it. IT's been talking about it.
I don't know if they can make my grades decay, called decaying averaging. So my grade is only worth 85%, 65%, then 32%, and then 12%, and then 0%. They should be able to do something for us if they can do
You just
that.
pull up, yeah, you should,
You're
on gradebook,
To your
on
point.
gradebook, I think we can do it. The other thing is, as far as the difference between the progress report and the SEP is typically an SEP has 1 or 2 goals for the child, and they're usually around math and reading. The progress report also tells me if my child consistently listens in class when they're supposed to, if they're consistently on task. It has some of those important things for your, as a parent, to know, how's my child behaving in class? Are they focused? Are they on task? And it's a lot more comprehensive. So the SEP is not supposed to be, hey, here's 9 areas. It's really 1 or 2. And so that would be one thing, is how can we, if we are, you know, we do get the progress report November 17th, but at that first parent teacher conference, as a parent, I would want to know, is my child on task? Are they listening? So I think we would need to be creative that way. Whether or not there's the actual grade book, at least the teacher is addressing that, because some of those things are really important. Okay, and then the other thing I wanted to talk about is I really love this conversation about simplifying for teachers. I absolutely feel our elementary school teachers sure have had a lot on their shoulders with all the new adoptions of curriculums like Wonders and our new science and everything that they've been doing, as well as the letters. I want to know in cabinet discussions if we've had a little more conversation around the extra letters assignments.
Yes.
I did hear that that October's assignment was, they don't have to do October's assignment or something.
Amber and her team brought this forward, and it'll be administrative, and I really appreciate ISD's work on this, and I'll let her speak to this, but essentially we would not require the teacher canvas assignment for module 6, 7, and 8.
Okay.
So up to 5, which really is kind of the heart of letters, right? Is that we are requiring the assignment up to that point because many teachers have already completed it. And so just in fairness
Yes.
to everybody and our commitment to that part of the instruction that they would finish that. But
Right.
module 6, 7, and 8.
6, 7, and 8.
They would
Okay,
not
I had just heard October's
Yeah.
assignments. Is that, is 6, 7, 8 October's only?
The rest of the
The
year.
rest of the year. Okay, I want to say a big thank you. I have actually had teachers emailing me. I had a teacher tell me, if you would have been in that faculty room, I said, what was the energy in the room? She said there were teachers full on crying. They were so grateful. So thank you for making that pivotal decision and to help them breathe a little more life into them as far as they're just exhausted. So I'm so grateful we're doing that. And I know it's our best teachers that are exhausted because they're trying to do it all just right. The other thing is we have 4 professional development days where they come to the district, and the difficulty for them for that is that they have to write the sub plans, and we have a shortage of subs. And so that's kind of double duty. Have we talked at all about maybe reducing that to 2 instead of 4 or 3 instead of 4?
So the planning time issue, my understanding is that we've traditionally negotiated those days in the spring. And so one of the things that we've talked about is just the current calendar as it is, and Sharice will talk about it later, needs to go forward as it's proposed, because all these other agencies, parents and, county, cities, they're all counting on our calendar to come out first before they start building theirs, not to mention parents and what they want to do. But in the spring, I think we've always negotiated for those additional days if they are. I think we need to be creative. Obviously, we're moving into budget contraction, and one additional day is about 1.23 million. So it might look a little different in what we recommend, but we've heard lots of teachers express that they need more time. That also means less in-person instruction time if we do that. But I'm not saying that that's not something that we think.
Okay, so I'm not talking about,
Sorry, can I interrupt? I think we're kind of moving
yeah,
off
yeah.
this topic
So,
with that conversation and
Yeah.
that is more
Okay.
applicable to the calendar.
okay, and I'm not talking about the calendar I'm not talking about the days they're paid where they're planning. I was talking about the professional development days here that pull them out of the classroom.
For letters.
For training.
For training.
For the letters, but it's mandated by the state and you can't
Okay.
not go.
Okay,
And
anyway.
that's also not quite.
Okay. Okay, sorry, I'm a little anxious just because this is something I've wanted to talk about, as you've heard, for so long. So, and as we're implementing the strategic plan, there's going to be more directives. So I just want simplification to be part of our process here. So anyway, okay, so as long as we have some really good dialogue when we're meeting with the SEPs so that we can hit those other targets with the progress report for parents to know and for the students to be reminded.
Maybe on the SEP, if we did like a behavior checkoff sheet that says your child is listening, I mean, it would be easy to put it on the one side or something. Your child is listening, your child's turned in their work, your child's, I think there's 4 of them, right? Somehow include that little piece on the SEP that would help parents know behavioral. Okay.
All right. Stephen's been very patient.
I'm extremely patient.
Good for you.
Yeah. First off, I want to thank you and the administration for moving forward on some ideas to do this. We've been talking about it as a board for a while, and I think the administration has been talking about it. And this is just the first of hopefully many that we will come up with as we try to streamline the system and try to figure out what's working, what's value added. I like option 2. It makes some sense. In that I always hated a master report card coming out where I had nothing like master. It was all ones or whatever. It was just too early in the year. I mean, if you're having a grade and it says you got A, B's, and C's, it's one thing to tell that. The parents can say, oh, I got B's. But here, if it's all ones, you go to parent, the parent goes, oh, it's all ones. What did it tell me? So the longer you have to attain some mastery, probably the better it's going to be. I also like the SEP in that pretty much all of us have an SEP if we're working. We do this quarterly evaluations. We go in and sit down and negotiate goals. We don't talk report cards with our bosses. We talk basically those, what are the most important issues we need to take on? And by the time they're doing this, I would assume that teacher has enough assessments from the first part of the year to pretty much tell where the child is and what the basic needs of that child are going to be. Not in regards to the mastery of this, but just what their issues are they need to focus on to get them up to mastery. I also assume that as we're going through the year, and I've had this with teachers, they're going through the year, if they're having my kids having a trouble with something, they're calling me and saying, we're having trouble in this, and can you help me out? Rather than waiting for a parent conference to say, 4 months ago, you should have been reading to your kid because he's really far behind. I'm hoping the teacher would call me up and say, your kid's falling behind on reading. Can you help him out? So I think option 2 would probably be a good one. There are no additional time off for this, correct? So the parents aren't going to have to be taking any more time off. We're just moving existing things around. And the one report card day we're getting rid of, it wasn't a day off, per se, was it? They had to do it at home. So we just took that away from them. Okay. Oh, it sounds like at this point, this may be, you're going to have the chance to get a report card a little bit later in the year. So you're going to be closer to hopefully getting something on that report card than being a Debbie Downer when you look at it and it's all ones or whatever, ones and twos, and then try and explain.
Well, and Steve, to a point that you made a little bit earlier, I don't know of any of I can speak to when I was a principal not too long ago. It feels like forever sometimes, but one of the conversations that I had with my faculty and staff on a regular basis was that when you sit down at parent-teacher conference or you're sending home that report card, it should never be a shock or surprise what they see on the paper. That should not be the first time they're going to know where their child is and everything in that regard. So
a lot of the teachers send notes home on a regular basis. They've got all kinds of text stuff they can send out now. So yeah, it shouldn't be. And putting this would be very specific. I don't know if the report cards themselves are that specific. It measures you against a standard, but it doesn't measure against yourself for what the most important things you need to. So starting this first off in the year after some initial testing, I think will probably be maybe of more value than later on we'll do that. So I'm feeling comfortable with option 2.
Okay, thank you. And just reminder board, we do have a couple other items. So, but Clarine
I just
and
have-
Mont had a quick follow-up.
Okay, so to the report card, they'll only have 2 columns on it, not 3 columns on it, and they'll only have a grade for January and a grade for May, correct? Okay.
the way that this is proposed, if we were going with
All right, so that's why just clarifying that we're not going to have 4 columns and they're putting them, they're putting in the grades, but they're not seeing a report card. Like you're not going to have the teachers do a grading system every quarter, just a grading system for the report card for those 2 times. But back to Steve's thought too. So Steve, on Skyward, you can actually do a progress report. And I used to print one off every week. Now that we've changed the standard-based grading, I can't do that because I haven't pushed the standard far enough to be able to do the grade. There is a thing called multiple subject grading that you could do, but you could do one a month and just have the standards in there that you have taught and the kids have been tested on, but maybe not mastered, but at least been tested and have some idea of what they are. So that parents would know if teachers wanted to do like one a month and send it home so that parents have an idea with their conversation. To your point of how to give parents information too.
Thank you, Mont.
It seems like the focus of our discussion is what will take something off the plate of the teachers. I kind of alluded to this before, please believe me, I love teachers. I've been sleeping with one for over half a century.
Hopefully the same one.
that joke never gets old, Mom.
Yeah, and it's still true. It just get to be longer and longer that I've been doing it. But can we not make a definitive statement, whether it be because we are evaluating 4 times a year, whether it be with an SEP or with a report card, or that the teachers are going fresher? Somebody please tell me that this makes education better for our children.
And our
Because
parents.
that's what we're all about, is educating the kids. And I want somebody to tell me it makes it better for the kids and they will learn better if we do something.
I think it does, Mont, because it's formative, it's 4 cycles, it's still 2 parent-teacher conferences. And I think rejuvenated teachers that see that day as more value just adds to the positive morale and their energy and what they're doing. So going back to your sports analogy, I think it just makes sense. You come out with goals, you perform, you come back, you adjust and finish. So.
Thank you. You said it. That's all I wanted, is somebody
Got
to
it.
say it.
All right, I'll say it.
Okay, thank you so much for bringing this to us, and thank you, board, for the discussion. So I'll just try and summarize here quickly. It sounds like this option 2 is something that is worth pursuing. From the comments that I've heard, procedurally, what would happen is, like was mentioned, that's not any more or less days off. It doesn't change the days kids are in school, but it's going to change the actual calendar where it notates when the end of a term is and things like that. So board, I'm thinking that we go ahead and suggest to the calendar committee, calendar creation, that when they bring the calendars back to us for second reading, that they incorporate what this would look like for the 23, 24 and 24, 25 school years. And I guess 25, 26, right? Just so that is what it looked like. And then I think the other component that we haven't really discussed, but I think it's important, is to do some sort of communicating out to parents, just so that when they see this, they understand the reason why and that it is a benefit to education. Any thoughts or ideas on that piece of it?
That's great.
Any other comments
They,
then?
well, in my life, they use the beginning of the school year when the parents came to the first couple of days of school, to have the principal have a meeting to explain the changes and help the parents understand through that meeting. Because there were a lot of parents there and they could show the reasons why and what they were doing, and then those parents told other parents, but also I'm sure.
So
Like
I think
back to
we should
school
just
night.
ask the
Yeah, back to
administration to
school
figure
night.
out the best way to communicate that, because parents that are used to getting 3 report cards would, under this new plan, would only be getting 2. And so, but everything else would stay the same.
Starts to feel like a semester then.
Except Brighton, they have 3 people.
No, we're just talking elementary.
And I think it's fair to say, to Mott's question and to what you're saying with the communication, it's very fair to say that if we can eliminate a little bit of the paperwork, administrative, it helps teachers. They know what their kids need, and it gives them more in-person, face-to-face with their kids. And we can't ever undervalue that,
Thank you. Okay. So that concludes that discussion item. Next is item 2B, proposal for the March 2nd, 2023 early outs for secondary schools. And this is in conjunction with the spring parent-teacher conferences. This is also being brought forward from the administration, and I'll turn the time over to Mr. Leon Wilcox, the business administrator.
We are,
One more time having.
That's why I'm still.
Well, I completely
My mistake.
agree with President Ingy and the board that, it's really part of the calendar. I was really hoping to bring this back for a second reading because I really wanted to hear a K joke.
I wanted to hear one too.
That you can use, excuse me.
Sorry, I made an adjustment to this presentation and just trying to pull up the correct. It's on board docs. We'll try this one out since, we just got through.
Here we go.
Yeah,
Got to remember first date.
That's it.
yeah, that's it right. I'll try this one out though, since we just got through Halloween. The holiday season is just starting. How do accountants value the value of Santa's sleigh? Net present value. Think about that.
Wow. You never failed to disappoint, Leo.
Okay, really quick. We wanted to bring an issue to you that we experienced this last as we talk calendar and parent teacher conference, we want to bring an issue that happened this past September on transportation. And to just highlight that there is a difference between it may seem I don't want to go down the rabbit hole too much here, but there is a difference between last year and this year as far as transportation. Last year with the Friday schedule, the middle schools doing late start, elementary's early out, high school's regular time. We essentially had two transportation schedules. We had a Monday through Thursday schedule and a Friday transportation schedule. Okay. So basically on Friday, most bus drivers ran a different route. Students had a different driver on a Friday most of the time last year. So that caused some issues, but last year on those two parent teacher conference days, the Thursdays, if you will, we ran this Friday early out schedule, okay, that we had in place. Keep in mind, we had about 33 Fridays every school days every year. So we just moved this transportation schedule ahead. And when we built these 33 Fridays out, we were able to do some single runs where we have 15 buses going to Jordan Valley in Friday afternoon. And so we built that all out last year. Well, then we come around this year, which we like because, everybody's on the same schedule. If you go Monday through Friday, everybody's early out. So drivers keep the same route. It makes us more efficient with the minutes and miles. The issue comes is that now we have the same schedule, but we have these two parent teacher conferences. It becomes a logistic issue right there. And that's what we're trying to solve by not going too far down the rabbit hole, if you will. So we're looking at, again, it was Thursday, September 29th, and this would be Thursday, the next parent teacher conference of Thursday, March 2nd. You can see the times, again, I don't want to get through this, but you can see we have overlapping times throughout the district, especially with Jordan Valley. So last September, we sent a message out to all the secondary schools saying, hey, we're probably going to be a few minutes late picking up with the bus routes because of this overlapping time. So we were anywhere from 5 to 25 minutes late at these secondary schools and on doing this. It worked out, I think, okay. We didn't hear too many issues. I don't know if you as the board did, but we got a few calls because some kids were late. It would be the secondary kids, not the elementary ones. But we couldn't do anything for Jordan Valley. They had to go the full day that day. And so then on that, of course, next Friday, the 30th was the comp day. What our proposal is just to make it a straight across early out, all schools, so we're all doing the same transportation system. on March 2nd. This would then be built into the calendars starting next year for the 2 Thursday parent-teacher conferences. They're not, it just says right now early out elementary. It does not say all schools, but that would be our proposals to make it all schools. This will allow us to do all routes without delays. In the secondary schools, they would still be required to hold the PLCs. Elementaries will of course be having the conferences then. Then as per the schedule calendar, March 3rd would be scheduled comp day. That's for all schools except Brighton. Brighton again would keep as the calendar shows right now, Thursday and a Friday. They're doing early out. Their parent-teacher conference day is April 20th. So we would work to make it even across board. We would we'd recommend them having an early out on April 20th, which is the same day as their parent-teacher conference. They would be required to meet as PLCs up until their conferences later in the afternoon. Then of course, Friday at the 21st would be their conference day. So that's the issue. We want to try to get that quickly. Is there any questions about that we explain that?
So as it currently stands, we let our elementary kids off half day without letting their brothers and sisters, older brothers and sisters there to take care of them. So the parents probably have to get childcare.
Yeah, the elementaries are out early, and that could be the case.
And so what this may do is line it up where on those Thursdays if the kids are off early or whatever,
That would be
then they would have their older siblings if they do that to be able to take care of them. So the family wouldn't have to take off from work or try to come up with daycare for that day.
the parents, lots of parents will be coming to the parent-teacher conferences.
So it may actually benefit the parents in some ways because they're not scurrying around to try to get a half day. As it is right now, all Fridays, we have the same. So if there's a range of children in each family, they can sort of help out in that process, at least
That
somebody's.
was one of the benefits.
This would be the same thing with
Fridays across the district.
yeah. So this would now probably in these two cases allow parents to not have to scramble for additional daycare or whatever, or have the kids stay off. I'm really wondering how many kids in the middle and high school actually stayed off because their elementary kids were coming off early anyway, that they were actually just staying
It's
home.
only 2 days a year. I mean,
It is, but
it's
but still, you still have to come up with somebody to take care of your kids for those days.
That just doesn't matter for Brighton people.
They're special.
The conflict overlap with Jordan Valley was the biggest.
Main thing.
And we asked them, they ran that scenario. I mean,
Yeah,
we had them actually go back and try to work it out, but there was virtually, I mean, we could not make it work, so.
The other option is do what we did, knowing that secondaries would go up, kid would get home a few minutes later. We would have to compensate the teachers at Jordan Valley for their prep time like we did last time.
Any other clarifying questions or comments on this one? So essentially, I'll try and summarize it then. The administration identified an issue, a problem, and this is the solution to fix it. And essentially that those 2 days a year, the secondary schools get an additional PLC time that they wouldn't have had otherwise. And so it's not like it's just early out. I mean, it is for the students, but the teachers will still
Full contract day.
working the full day. So, but this is also two parts. One is this upcoming spring parent-teacher conference. And I'm assuming that you're thinking in ongoing years, it's also something that needs to be addressed and that this solution would be workable or ongoing.
We request that this be added to, starting to next year's calendar, early out those 2 days. We haven't written out in the calendar. Early out all schools. If you will.
Okay, so board, do we feel all right about asking our calendar committee people then to show these adjustments in the upcoming calendars? And to, for this year's calendar that the board has already approved, we'll need this to be a separate approval item for the board that's specific to this March of 2023. So do we feel okay asking the administration to write up a memo and put it on consent for next board meeting? So that then the decision is made and communication can get out to the schools and parents.
Yes.
Everyone okay with that? Any other thoughts or comments on this item? All right, so now having given some additional work to the calendar committee, the next item on our study session agenda is the 2023-24 calendar for approval and tentative approval for the 2024, 2025, 2025, 2026. Oh my goodness, how fast time goes. School calendars. So this is an annual process, and I will turn the time over to Sharice Hilton, Student Engagement Program Administrator, who is also our new calendar committee.
Yes. So pretty much, we have lots of things to go back and review. You will note that on the calendar for next year, you will see that both trimesters and quarters are listed for the elementary schools. We knew that this was a pending proposal. You will see moving ahead, again, pending approval, then we've adjusted those calendars. So please know that this is all a proposal and we know it's pending on a decision. We did not assume anything. So for next year, as you asked President TU, we will go back as a committee and revise next year's calendar so that you can look at it and see what that looks like with the proposed changes with the quarters. The other pieces, Leon covered as well, those early out days that are listed as just early out elementary. You will see that we are looking forward to changing that to early out K-12. And that's to address the transportation issue that he explained as well. So you will see that that's identified on these calendars as well, those early out days, so that you can see what that would look like in a K-12 situation. So really, what you had already approved or seen for next year, not approved, but already seen, those are the only changes that you might note is the early out and pending an approval to go from trimesters to quarters for the elementary schools. And moving ahead, we created the calendars for 24, 25 and 25, 26 following that same pattern there. So those are really the only major changes that you would see moving forward from what the calendar has reflected before. There is, I believe it's 24, 25. We do have 8 days for winter break, and that's just a matter of where the calendar fell. Also that we are going into just that last week of May, a couple of days past Memorial Day as well, just to note. So, and you'll see all of that on. We had our first meeting last week and had a great turnout, lots of great representation from all aspects across the district and pretty robust discussion. I'm grateful that Amber and Steve were both there for that discussion, and lots of different pieces that have come up here tonight as well that we'll save for further discussions. In that, just keeping it very simple, those are the only major changes that you'll know on these proposed calendars.
Okay, any questions, board? Amanda?
Thank you for explaining the piece about that every Friday will be an early out, that'll be more clear on the calendar. That was one of my major questions. The other one is, I know that we have a couple days a year where teachers are paid to do work at home. Do we have, has it been talked about putting that on the calendar so that's indicated somewhere?
So I don't know how far you want me to go into that. Rick and I have talked, just feedback from teachers. I've received emails as the calendar person. One thing I will note that you will know from the calendar committee discussions are, and I've talked about this with Mr. Diamond as well. I don't know that that there is, looking for the right word to use, I believe there's misunderstanding amongst many of our teachers about that 2 days that they are paid. And so I feel that's something we need to communicate as a whole, that we need to make sure that that's understood. I've had many of those discussions since being given this assignment. And Dr. Robbins and I visited with an elementary faculty about it. And it's just that when we talk about the number of teachers that we have turning over and new hires, et cetera, we need to make sure we're communicating that piece.
Amanda,
So-
that needs to come through negotiations. like the calendar committee can't decide that.
But if it's already been negotiated and it's happening, why would
Well,
that
that
be
is,
listed on the
but
calendar?
adding more days.
Yeah, the 2
No,
days.
that's not what I'm saying. I'm saying, can we reflect the ones that we already have?
Okay, sorry, I misunderstood.
It's reflected on the salary schedule up at the top. The reason why we didn't put it on the calendar was to allow flexibility for the educator. That it wasn't a Saturday or a particular day, but it was 16 hours that they could use at any point in time. And they don't have to timesheet it, they don't have to do anything. It's just understood that they're provided that. So it's there, but I think Sharice is very correct about with the turnover. I think many people have forgotten that that's actually there.
And so we've had discussions that should be part of our recruiting conversations as we're recruiting teachers to come to Canyons. You will be paid for 2 days. And the way I phrased it, and I have phrased it, and Amber and I talked about this at the calendar meeting. I've explained it to teachers. This is the board, they have not acknowledged that there is time spent out of contract time, and they're trusting you. There's no documentation, there are no timesheets required. They're being trusted that time is indeed happening. So I do feel we need to up our communication on that to make sure that our employees understand that there are 2 full paid days.
Great. I think there's a couple other questions. Clarine?
So Steve, mine's for you. Why do we not have the teachers just say that they have done that and sign so that they have it in their brain that does happen? And that you have the paperwork and the administrator can just keep it? Cause I did that this year for 4 days before school started.
For us, it was just to show trust in our educators and to acknowledge that they were doing this work, that we know that they are. And so.
I know they are. I just was thinking then everybody would know.
It's like a signed.
Yeah, it would just be like, here's my 2 days. I've done 'em. But I just wondered.
They just get paid for it, right? Without any documentation.
Some teachers may do it an hour at a time. 16 days.
Yeah,
Well, that's what I did. I had a timesheet and I just wrote on it and then turned it in.
I think any teacher that's worth their salt in the district is outside of contract hours, putting in a lot
A
more.
little more than 16 days.
that's for sure.
Yeah. And I think we've just started this discussion to talk about ways that we can better communicate this, to our employees.
Other questions or comments on this? Holly and then.
I've had some parents asking me, neighboring districts have 3 days off. And, asking, why don't we do that and eliminate one of our day offs that we have throughout the calendar? And I know some of those day offs are coordinated around, when there's grading periods and all of that. But I wanted to pass that along, that I think there is quite a bit of interest with have 3 days instead of the 2.
What day would you pull?
Well,
You'd add it at the end. What would you do?
Added at the end?
Yeah, I go.
Get out of Christmas.
Second, you guys get out on what day? I mean.
yeah,
30th.
and I'm not proposing, I'm not proposing a solution or which day. Just saying that's something that I hear a lot.
Yeah, my dream is to have a week spring break, a week fall break, 2 weeks of Christmas, and have it all fit between the first
Labor Day and Memorial Day, yeah, you and me both.
Add up to 180.
and add up to 180 days.
I will note these all do equal 180 days. Those have been checked, so we are at 100.
Then get off every other Friday. Why not?
Okay.
So, and any serious thought on that with the 3 days for fall break rather than the 2? Or no, just
I
those
don't know
other
that
days?
that wouldn't come from us on the calendar committee. Do you know what I mean? We have guidelines that we've been given as far as the days and when they fall. So I think that would have to come.
Could we possibly, because this is the first read, there'll be a second read, we possibly just review why those random days are off throughout the calendar year?
And
The reasoning for it?
and maybe I would appreciate some help too, Holly, which specific days you're.
The 2
reviewing.
teacher.
Just the grading ones.
days,
Just the grading one.
Days.
Yeah, there's,
And then the one in January for planning.
yeah, and the January,
That's-
that's what I'm talking about, yeah.
That's the only,
Yeah.
is the January. Otherwise, you'd have to take it off of spring recess, fall or
Christmas.
recess.
The other 2 are the grading.
All days, yeah.
Well, one's grading and two are compensatory because of parent-teacher conferences.
Yeah, that's what I meant,
It
sorry.
makes it nice because that links onto MLK. So they do get an extended weekend for that.
That is true.
Yeah, we tried. to do-
Superintendent?
So just to frame kind of a bigger, more of a problem than a solution, but you remember through the pandemic, one of the things that changed with state rule was 990 hours. And then there was a lot of flexibility around 180. And the state has not been very clear on whether or not they're going to go back to a firm requirement for 990 and 180. And so in the meantime, you see different districts, including our neighbor, have really taken advantage of that, right or wrong. But there's a number of days that are now built in, and I don't know exactly how they're or what they're doing to make that allowable. But I do worry a bit that if we go down that road and we start that, down that path, and then the state reverses field and says, hey, we're going back to 180 firm and 990, then trying to, pull that time back would be difficult. And, this question came up with the teachers that we met with, because I get the sense that there's a lot of frustration that, we didn't continue those virtual days that I think some of our surrounding districts have continued to utilize. But if you remember during that time, one of the things that I felt like is that the culture that was starting to develop and emerge was I don't have to come to school.
Yeah.
That I can stay home, I can get on Canvas. I don't really need to be in person. And we've seen our attendance rates dip, some schools near 70%. And I feel like we're finally trending the right way. We're back above 90%. I think the culture is getting reestablished that yes, you're back in school, but I think that definitely has come with some pain points around this very issue that was caused during the pandemic. And I've reminded people that during that time, a lot of those decisions were in an emergency crisis response. But I think, it'd be very problematic for us to try to continue that trend of just adjusting, where everybody's counting on our calendar, parents are counting on those days, that we got to get back to some resemblance of consistency that people can count on. But having said that, other districts have, some of them are down to 173 of in-person instruction. And so, there's a trade-off. There's a trade with that. And I take that serious. And I also understand our teachers' perspectives of feeling overwhelmed. And we are, as you saw, we're looking at every single possible avenue to try to take things off their plates to help. But I'm just not sure what that's going to look like in the future and, what those days might actually mean. So
And I'll go back to provide a better or a worse education for the kids to have fewer.
Well, look at our test scores.
Yeah.
That's the answer.
That's what I was.
Pay the course.
I was gonna piggyback on what Rick said too. I'm one of those, and academically, it's killing the kids. Because we're losing so many Fridays, like it's almost every other Friday I'm gone, and it's like, I'm going, oh my gosh, now I have to test on a Thursday, now I have to do all my assessments on this Thursday, and then the whole week. And so it's not benefiting in my brain, the students. And it really isn't benefiting me because I'm stressed on how to get the academics in and how to get those assessments done and get those kids where they need to, where they're proficient. When I'm losing a day to 2 days every month. And that's a lot of days. Like some months I'm missing 5 days and I'm thinking I'm behind a whole week. How am I behind a week? And then I realized I missed a Friday. I missed 2 days. I missed a Friday. I missed a Friday. 5 days. So when we start talking about, like you're asking, we really need to go to Mott's question. Is this going to benefit the kiddos? Because that's who we're here for.
This is not well received by the parents. They don't like us going on learning unless we actually have to. Going this.
Not even
remote.
on learning,
It's
we're
not seen as a
not
very
in there.
beneficial, a lot of the parents I've talked with, so it's a fine line trying to do it with, we have to do which when we need to do our teachers and support them, but also we have a lot of parents that just don't like the disruption in their lives, and they don't think it's a quality education on the day we're having.
And I think we need to return to where there is a sense of urgency
Mhm.
in educating the kids.
Yeah, and that's what, I think that's what we tried to
And
communicate. It's just,
bottom line, in 13 years in our district, we need to have those kids prepared when they leave us.
For sure.
Well, and as a calendar committee, just to remind you guys, we went through a big process like several years ago where we surveyed all parents, we surveyed all teachers and employees on what they wanted with the calendar, and that's when we got rid of like all these random days. Because that is what everyone wanted,
That is true.
so we could get our.
That's
That's a good reminder. That's a good reminder.
Okay, and then also, just to remind everyone, one of the reasons why we look out 3 years on these calendars, and superintendent mentioned that as well, as people plan around the school calendar, and they plan well in advance, including our trying to reserve our venues for high school graduation. So that's part of the is to set those start and end dates so that people can plan. And then, there is, if we need to adjust something a little bit in the middle, like we talked about earlier this evening, with where the grading term dates lie on the calendar. And that doesn't really affect the other bookends of the calendar. Steve?
One of the things we didn't bring up, which we always bring up every year on the calendar, we may want to take a look at, is A and B days. A lot of times the A teachers and the B teachers were really concerned because they had fewer B days, especially with concurrent enrollment or AP courses in high school. So we may want to make sure, and that ties in the number of days we have off now and the half days we have off. It affects the A, B days and our quality of education for our kids at high schools that are now taking the concurrent enrollment and stuff.
And those were checked, Steve, so we.
So we're okay with those? Okay.
You know, Holly, if you look at the 24-25 calendar, you could peel 2 days in January because they go Wednesday, Thursday, Friday for 1, 2, 3 January. You could peel those 2 days off and drop those to fall break. That's one that jumps out at me.
And then,
But it's sure nice to have those full 2 weeks off of Christmas.
Yeah.
That's where we take it off.
because then we would come back, on the second.
Your attendance on those 2 days are gonna be,
We're
You have
lucky
a
that
half
we
day.
have,
Well,
no, we're lucky that we have 2 weeks off. of
I like
Christmas.
I'm just saying that is an option.
That
You
is a
could.
choice.
I'm not saying we should.
Yeah.
Just saying it's available, yeah.
It's great to look forward to.
But, you know, Sharice, you do a lot of hard work in making this, pulling it together, and making it work. And by the time you finish, somebody's always going to disagree with you. And if you make a change, you'll have another set of people disagreeing with you, so
This calendar,
we're all equally unhappy.
this calendar doesn't always just affect teachers either. It affects everybody at the district office. I mean, like, so then you can't just look at this as a teacher calendar either, because there's the other people in the district office and the custodians and the lunch ladies and everybody else that it does affect. And so,
And it also affects out in the private sector and even like community rec programs and, piano teachers and all of those. So that's why, it's good to look forward ahead quite a ways, but it's also good to be consistent. So.
There was a discussion if we line up with all of our other sister districts in regards to vacation time, because our vacation time is different, but we're going.
Yeah, every time I plan a family deal, I look at Alpine, Canyons, Jordan, and Davis. And match their calendars.
Well, our next meeting is next week, so we'll do the things you've asked us to do tonight so that we have updated drafts to share with you. And any feedback before then, just feel free to reach out.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. And tell the committee, we appreciate their work as well.
Yeah, it was a great discussion. We have a good group of people and so.
All right, thank you so much. We'll look forward to seeing those revisions. Okay, that concludes our items for study session and we will reconvene for our business meeting at 7 o'clock. 10 minutes.
We are about ready to begin. If I could have your attention, please, we're ready to begin the meeting. All right, thank you. I would like to welcome you all to the business meeting of the Canyons Board of Education. Today is November 1st, 2022. And we're meeting at the district office located at 9361 South, 300 East in Sandy, Utah. The first item on the agenda is to approve the agenda for this business meeting. I will ask for a motion on that. I'm asking for a motion.
I'll make a motion. Make a
Okay.
motion, we approve the agenda for November 1st, 2022 as written and also in board docs.
Okay, thank you. Is there a second to the motion? I'll second it. Thank you. Any discussion to this motion? All right, seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes. Thank you. Next, we will be led in the Pledge of Allegiance by Ken Rowley, Alta High School principal. And following the pledge, Principal Rowley will give us some school highlights from Alta High School.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. Thank you. I was waiting for the USA chant after the pledge, so. It is an honor and a pleasure to be here tonight and share a few things that are going on at Alta High School, which is an amazing place to be. I've learned that over the last few months. First off, I'd like to thank the school board for the time that they have provided for each one of us in our school to collaborate as teams as we focus on learning together how to meet the needs of our students. Great things are going on in our PLC teams at Alta High School. The work of an educator is a journey with many peaks and valleys. As educators, we travel this journey together, but each experience is personal according to our own learning and beliefs up to that point of our journey. If each of us were in the same place as far as our experiences and personal beliefs about education, change would be a simple thing. But we have a wide spectrum of experiences, beliefs, and perspectives, so even making the simplest of changes can be a great challenge. One thing I have learned over my years in education is that we must honor each individual's educator's journey as they gain new experiences and question their own personal educational beliefs. It is a journey of an entire career, even in a journey of a lifetime for many of us. It is also a great adventure. As long as we have a relationship where we can have honest conversations and help each other progress on our journey, we will be successful. It is hard to believe we are 2 weeks into the second term of this school year. Just a couple positives that are going on in our school right now and other activities. Our theater students recently went to Cedar City and competed in the high school Shakespearean festival and came away with a third place finish, which was pretty impressive at the highest level of that competition. They are also, our performing arts will begin their Addams Family production on the 15th of this month with a matinee for many of the elementary and middle school students in our district. And then the 16th through the 19th for the public in our PAC, which is a beautiful facility. Our marching band took third place in its first competition of the year. And over the last 5 weeks, they've competed in 4 different competitions and placed very well. And they are preparing for their St. George trip for the state championship competition in St. George this weekend. Our robotics and esports students are gearing up for their main parts of their competition season over the next month or two. Our cross country, girls tennis, and girls soccer teams all represented well in their region and state tournaments. Our football team has made it to the quarterfinals of the state tournament, winning their first two games, the first one in Bonneville, the second one at Springville. And this next Friday, we play at Orem. So kind of an exciting time for that team. Our volleyball team began their state tournament tonight. They are playing Box Elder in our gym as we speak right now. So I'm kind of anxious to get back to see how that game ends up. We recently held our digital citizenship week, where we focused on having meaningful conversations with students about new attendance, are making good choices in their digital lives, which sometimes can be a difficult thing, not only for children, but for adults. We have implemented a new attendance policy, this year at Alta High School, and it's helped the culture of our building from kids hanging out to kids going to class and being engaged in that work and staying away from the hallways and the restrooms while class is in session. We've had many positive comments from our community and parents and stakeholders there in our community about this new attendance policy. We recently had a Latinos night for our Latinos in Action and their parents, and we had over 140 people there. And that was very impressive to me. I really enjoyed being able to give the bienvenido or the welcome in their own language, and to be able to talk with many of their parents afterwards in their native tongue about what we are trying to do to help the language learners and specifically the Latino community in our area. Recently, the USB announced the school grades, and Alta earned an A, and that was an exciting day to be able to go in and read that and see where we are having some successes according to the data and areas that we need to work on. And plans are already being put into place how to remedy some of the areas where we came up short in. But that grade is a direct reflection of the dedication and the hard work of the people that we have working at our high school there at Alta. I'm amazed by their great efforts and very grateful for the opportunity to be able to work with them each day. Every evening when I go home, I'm always encouraged and energized by the amazing students and the things that they are learning and doing in their lives at this point in their life. So in conclusion, there is never a boring moment at Alta High School. The roof, they seem asleep during the day, but as soon as 3 or 4 o'clock hits, the energy level rises greatly. Go Hawks.
Yes, go Hawks, and give that volleyball team our best as they continue their season. And thank you so much for sharing that with us. And please extend our appreciation to the faculty, the staff, the students. We are so grateful for all the good things that are happening there. And it's just wonderful to hear that report from you. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda, we will have some recognitions, and I'll turn the time over to Mr. Jeff Haney and Kirsten Stewart from the Communications Department.
Thank you, President Tingy, for this time to recognize the achievements of students, faculty, and staff in Canyons District. Those who are mentioned tonight will receive a letter of commendation from the board and the superintendent. And as Mr. Rowley said, we are honoring those student athletes from Corner Canyon and Alta High Schools. They have fought their way into the 5A and 6A football quarterfinals. So the #1 Chargers advanced to the quarterfinals with a convincing 63-18 win over Layton. And Alta entered the playoffs as the #19 seed. First, they won against #14 Bonneville and then beat #3 Springville to make their way into the quarterfinals. These are the final teams standing in 6A and 5A. Both Corner Canyon and Alta play on Friday. The Chargers play West and the Hawks play Orem. Good luck to both of those teams as they seek to take state. Now, our next honorees can truly run like the wind. Congratulations to all of our students from Canyons District who qualified to run at the state cross-country championships. Canyons District's cross-country athletes left nothing on the 5A and 6A state championship course last week. All 5 of Canyon's district's traditional high schools qualified to race. In the 6A division, the Corner Canyons girls team took 3rd place overall, and the Charger boys claimed 6th place with an individual podium finishes by Connor Watcott, who finished 7th, and Jeff Lewis in 9th place. In 5A girls, Brighton High's Leabelle Sellender took 8th place. And as Mr. Rowley mentioned, as we're talking about student athletes, we want to note today's start of the 6A and 5A volleyball championships. Corner Canyon faces Fremont, Alta serves against Box Elder, and Brighton plays Skyline. And all of those games started at 6 o'clock. So we will be watching the scores during board meeting. Of course, we'll pay attention to the board, but we'll be watching the scores, cheering for our students who are seeking those state titles in volleyball. Our next honoree is Alicia Herner. She is one of 5 National Model School Psychology Intern Supervisors as named by the National Association of School Psychologists. Congratulations to Dr. Herner. This is a program for recognizing field-based internship supervisors who consistently demonstrate best practices in supervising and mentoring. To qualify for this from the National Association of School Psychologists, a nominee must have supervised at least 2 school psychology interns over the past 5 years and have demonstrated best practices for the field, among a few other qualifications. So congratulations to Dr. Herner. And on a related note, next week is School Psychology Awareness Week as celebrated by the National Association. The theme this year is Together We Shine. In Canyons District, our staff of almost 40 school psychologists, they are experts in their fields and they play integral roles in ensuring positive relationships, inclusivity, and respect are present in all of our school communities. So thank you to all of our school psychologists. We will celebrate them next week. And congratulations to Dr. Alicia Herner. Our next honorees are our student performers who have been rehearsing for months for shows that are sure to delight audiences all across Canyons. Now, the curtains are almost ready to go up on the fall musicals at Alta and Brighton, Corner Canyon, Hillcrest, and Jordan High Schools. You'll see here that Jordan High School's Once Upon a Mattress opens on Thursday. That's when I have my tickets. I'm excited to see that. It runs from the 3rd to the 7th. Corner Canyon's Crazy for You is November 10th through the 14th. Alta High's Adams Family is November 16th to the 21st. Hillcrest's Oliver is November 16th to the 21st. And you got Brighton High's SpongeBob the Musical, which is an experience if you've never seen it, December 1st through the 3rd. If you've never been to a fall musical at one of Canyons District high schools, we would encourage you to go. They are fantastic, wonderful family entertainment. You will not be disappointed. We encourage everyone to go to support our students who are in our fall musicals. Our next honorees are the student musicians who make up Alta and Brighton High marching bands. Mr. Rowley mentioned this, but Alta and Brighton are preparing for this weekend's state competition in St. George. The Hawks will take the field at Crimson Cliffs High at 3 o'clock. The Bengals will compete at 3:30. Since September 17th, the marching bands have been competing at invitationals in preparation for the state competition. So we wish the Hawks and the Bengals much luck at the state finals. And this is further proof that arts education is thriving in Canyons District. Now, lastly, members of the board, we note the district's annual reminders of those men and women who have served in the U.S. Armed Forces. November 11th is Veterans Day, and that is a day that is marked in Canyons District with assemblies and events. These are some of the photos of an event last year at Quail Hollow Elementary School, but we have these types of events all across our district. In Canyons, we have a firm belief that, in the words of Elmer Davis, an infamous war correspondent, this nation will remain the land of the free only so long as it is the home of the brave. Every year, Canyon schools hold Veterans Day activities. They post flags. They invite local veterans to breakfasts. They have special musical performances. They add to veterans' walls. And every year as well, the Board of Education and Administration send a letter of appreciation to every employee who is a current or former member of the U.S. Armed Forces. And this letter expresses sincere appreciation for the service that they have rendered to protect all of our rights, including the right of every child to access a free and appropriate education. We will mark November 11th, Veterans Day, with a lot of assemblies and activities. Please watch our website, our social media pages for photographs and reports of those very special events for people who have given so much to our community. President Tingey, thank you for this time. We turn the time back to you.
Thank you very much for sharing all of those amazing achievements with us. And we celebrate along with those wonderful students and staff and know that there are so many great things happening throughout the district. Okay, we have now come to the patron comment portion of our meeting, and the first patron that will address the board will do so by telephone, and I'm told by our IT people that I need to call them. So I will ask for just your patience for a minute while we get them on the phone.
This is Rebecca.
Hi, Rebecca. This is Nancy Tingey calling from the board meeting. You will be the first to address the board, but before we give you your time, I would like to read a few instructions that will apply to your comments as well as those that are here in the room to make comments. We have now come to the patron comment portion of our meeting. Time. The board often designates time in meetings to listen to the patrons of the district. Patron comment time is limited to residents and taxpayers of Canyons District, students and parents of students, and current employees of the district. Patrons may provide board members with written documents. These documents are submitted to the board secretary at the meeting, and she's sitting right over here, or emailed to the Office of Public Communications by noon of the day following the board meeting. This evening, we have 7 individuals that have signed up to address us. Those representing themselves will be given 3 minutes, and those representing groups will be given 4 minutes. Comments made during patron comment time are part of the public record. It is the board's practice to listen and take notes during patron comments. The Board of Education does not discuss matters that are not on the meeting's agenda, nor engage in public comment on individual students to protect their privacy or employee issues. If a patron wants to comment on a district employee's character, professional competence, or mental or physical health, the board requests that those comments be submitted to the board in writing. However, if the patron determines to verbally comment on those personnel issues, the comments need to be civil and refrain from personal attacks, insults, defamatory or slanderous comments about an individual. The Board of Education would like to make it clear that critical race theory is not part of the curriculum being used in Canyon School District. There are no plans to incorporate it into the curriculum or instruction. The Board of Education values input on all sides of issues. To maintain decorum and respect, we ask that those in attendance refrain from applause or other types of demonstrations during the patron comment time, as well as throughout the meeting. So thank you for your patience as I read through those instructions. So the first patron to address the board is Rebecca Gilka, and that will be by telephone. And then we'll turn time to Stacy Peterson and then to Megan J. Okay, Rebecca, go ahead. We can hear you. Well,
in regards to sensitive, can you hear me?
yes.
Oh, okay. I thought you said you couldn't. Okay. In regards to sensitive materials in the public school libraries, the legislature has already addressed this under HB 374, and your own board policy addresses it. These books aren't supposed to be in the library, yet Canyons continues to retain these books in the library collection. This isn't banning or censorship. The books still exist. You can buy them, but they don't need to be promoted in school libraries. We as a society already acknowledge we have issues with pornography, depression, and child sex abuse. Why would we promote these materials in our public schools regardless of age? It's not positive. It doesn't promote anything of real value, and I'm sure there are much better books available to promote in our schools that will bring more value to students. Do we put Playboy in the schools for the articles? When I sent a review request for the book, The Haters, I got an email back saying, quote, it did not satisfy the criteria for deselection for sensitive materials in that when the work is taken as a whole, it does not appeal to the prurient interest in sex of minors. The definition of prurient is, quote, marked by or arousing an immoderate or unwholesome interest or desire, especially marked by arousing or appealing to sexual desire. How does this book not do this when on page 265 there is a graphic, elaborately described sex scene from start to finish? Definitely rated NC-17 if it was a film, not to mention numerous other references in the book to sexual acts. Did the reviewer actually read it with the eyes of an adolescent or even a human? And why is the burden on me to prove that this book is trash when traditionally it would have never been allowed? I think the burden is on you to tell me why this book, which contains pornographic material, needs to be available to children. Which leads me to the book challenges. Why would you want to limit on the number of books a parent can challenge? We are basically doing the work for you, showing you why it shouldn't be in the school library. Why can't we all work together? There are people who have already read the books and have pulled out parts needing to be looked at when judging the book by its merits to be in the library. Setting limits on book challenges only gives the impression that you don't want to deal with this. Granite School District has no limits. CSD needs to revise its policy to allow every book to be challenged if it contains pornographic material. When you read a book, you picture images in your mind. So does a child. Is it really in the best interest of the child to read these sexually graphic scenes? Why again would we want to put these images in the minds of our adolescent children? A question you asked about something earlier in your previous meeting, does this benefit the kiddos? Thank you.
Thank you. Next is Stacy Peterson, and then Megan J, and then Jessica Smith.
Thank you. I'm Stacy Peterson. I have 2 children in Canyons District. I continue to be distressed and disappointed at the same thing. I should echo everything that the first caller just said. At the books that remain on the shelves after SB 374 came out, after some guidance at least from the USB and also from our state attorney general, it feels like, yes, there are some books that are probably in that gray area that maybe I think is unacceptable, but somebody else wouldn't. But there's a whole lot of books that are way, way far out of that gray area that I think should have been removed right as soon as SB 374 was passed. When we look at what books are in there and the standards that we have to meet, there are a lot that just don't belong there. And so I'm sitting here thinking, why isn't the board getting them out of here? And I thought maybe you don't really know what's in there. Like I didn't know until someone showed me. So I brought a packet that I gave to each of you today, and I'll send it electronically so you can have the links in it. But the second part of the packet in the middle between the green sheets are just the first part is just some of the books that are in Canyons, the pictures of the cover and some of the photos or some of the passages from there. It's not fun to read them. Don't get me wrong. It's awful, but I think you would never read those to your children or your grandchildren. And I don't think we should allow those to be read at the school. The second section is a list of books that at least one rating site has considered a 3 out of 5, which is at least an R rating if it was an equivalent in a movie. And there's 93 of those in Canyon schools. I mean, anything that's an R rating or even worse seems like it should be a no-brainer to take it out. So I just listed them there. And then after the title of the book, there's a website that you can go to see the rating on the book, a description of the story, what the concern is. Sometimes it lists how many times they say these bad words, and then pages and passages. So the very last thing in there is just that website for the first book that's on that list. And none of it's good. I mean, none of it's good. That book happens to be one, and the summary says a 14-year-old girl watches from heaven her friends and family after she was brutally raped and murdered. Why do we want this for our children? Like, it just seems crazy to me. So I want you to know what's in there so that we can look at our policy. And it's been in effect for a year. I don't think it's doing what it's supposed to be doing. Otherwise, these books would be out by now. I do have the same concerns. Why should I only be limited to 2 challenges a year? If I can read the book and show you where I think it violates the law, and I can tell you the passages and the page numbers, I feel like I should be able to challenge whatever needs to be challenged. I looked at my daughter's at Corner Canyon. I looked at that 93 books. Over 30 of them are in her school. It would take me 15 years to get all those books challenged. So that's a problem. Also, I don't want to waste my challenge on a challenge that's already been on a book that's already been challenged. So I would like for the district to make it available for us so we can see where they are. And I don't think they should be on the shelf while we're challenging them. We can all work together to make it safer for our kids. Thanks.
Thank you. Megan J., then Jessica Smith, and then Alicia Cottle.
Okay, so I've really struggled with what to say tonight. I've been working on the book issue in Canyons for almost a year. But I do have some questions that I'd like to ask the board and also people in the audience. So what is sensitive material? How do you create and vote on policy if you do not read it? I would like to ask every board member if you have actually looked at and read the content that is in some of our libraries. I will be reading some small quotes from each book that I'm highlighting today. So I provided the board with some more of those quotes on a 3-page yes. I ask these questions. What is considered harmful to minors if this is not? From Water for Elephants, which is located at Jordan, Brighton, and Hillcrest. Her hand slips between my legs and slides over my crotch. My head, which has been wobbling on its stem, snaps upright. She says, her eyes half closed. He's ready now. Damn, I love them at this age. What may trigger a survivor if this does not? From Living Dead Girl. A review form was submitted in May and retained on first review level of our policy. This book is available at Brighton. The publisher's website has an age rating of 16 plus. This should be deselected under the age appropriateness criteria after being notified of being in a district library that caters to students as young as 13. This is a quote from that book. He pushes faster than harder, and we know what they're talking about there. And slams my head into the floor over and over until my vision is bright and fuzzy. What is considered pornography if this is not? From What Girls Are Made Of. A review form was submitted in May and still available. This book is still available at Alta and Brighton. I pull him out of his underwear and he's soft in my hand. I don't look up at his face before I open my mouth and pull him into it. And I pull and I suck until he grows hard. The jet of him is warm and salty and tastes like thickened sweat. These 3 examples violate state statute 76-10-1227. When a book review or challenge request comes in, the book needs to be removed immediately. while they are being reviewed. Books do not need to be reviewed under 76-10-1201 or 76-10-1203 if they violate 76-10-1227. It is either or. A book only needs to violate one state statute, not all three. They need to be removed immediately per AG's guidance. If then the district feels it necessary to review under 1227 for serious value, which doesn't mean any value, they can, but the district would still be in violation of that state statute and not protected against the lawsuit from parents. Can I just say one more thing? And I'll make it quick. It's on that form. I've notified the district of a book called Oryx and Crake. I won't read details, but I want you guys to know that the definition on destiny. So if you search on our database library and you search the word porn, it pulls this book up. And the detail for that title on our destiny library database says, Jimmy, perhaps the last living human unaltered by science, struggles for survival in a apocalyptic world as he tries to make sense of how everything went wrong, mourning the loss of his beloved Oryx, a girl he met through a kiddie porn website. The child in this book is 8 years old. It's available at Alta, Hillcrest, and Jordan. So thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Smith, Alicia Cottle, and then Holly Mars.
Hello. First off, I just want to echo what Jeff Haney said. I loved what he said, how we should provide a free and appropriate education. And I think everything we're hearing tonight kind of echoes how inappropriate it is. So I'm hoping we could kind of turn the page on that. So I have spoken before about my concern with the inappropriate books in our schools. And let me be very clear on what I deem inappropriate so as not to be labeled as a book burner or book banner, which is completely offensive and simply not true. If some choose to read these sexually explicit and vulgar books, then they have the choice of a bookstore, public library, or online means to do so. Any book that is available in our schools that is sexually explicit, whether in words, pictures, or any other means, is absolutely unacceptable. It is in violation of HB 374, and if you wouldn't read it to your children, grandchildren, or you have problems with us reading it here in the board meeting, then it should not be available at our children's school. And I include the school library and the classrooms, the teachers' libraries. I know this topic can be difficult considering how much cultural warfare is going on in our society, but the more aware that I become, the more inappropriate books I find. Some examples of titles in our middle school that have children as young as 11 years old include the following. The Poet X, which contains sexual activities and sexual nudity. The Freedom Rider's Diary had sexual activities, sexual nudity, alternate sexualities, profanity, derogatory terms, violence, including child abuse and molestation, hate, including racist commentary, and alcohol and drug abuse. The book Speak contains sexual activities, including inexplicit sexual assault and rape. And lastly, Speak, the graphic novel, which contains self-harm and suicidal ideations, sexual activities, and sexual assault, and all with pictures. This is just to name a few. And again, these are all found in our middle school, where children as young as 11 can read them. I have heard excuses of policy to literary value from our district as to why these books cannot be weeded out. It is ridiculous. I don't believe that you can't abide a law. You are making a choice to break this law and risking a lawsuit if you don't get these books off of our shelves. It has been 1 year since this problem was first brought to your attention. That is more than enough time to change the policy and to get these sexually explicit and vulgar books out of our schools. The Attorney General stated the following in this memorandum dated June 2nd, 2022, quote, there are actions the board and LEAs may take in complying with HB 374 to mitigate the risk of a legal challenge. The first is to immediately remove books from the school libraries that are categorically defined as pornography under state statute. This will help protect the LEAs from potential lawsuits brought by parents or groups alleging the school failed to comply with state laws, end quote. I am sad that I am here a year later and we are still having the same conversation. I know that there has been some slow, good progress, but it just isn't enough.
My concerns remain the same, and these sexually explicit books remain on the shelf. So my question to you, the board and Superintendent Robbins, is what are you going to do about it? And do we really need to file a lawsuit? Thank you.
Thank you. Alicia Cottle, Holly Mars, and then Jessica Anderson.
Hi, thank you for giving me this opportunity. These bright and energetic youth are the future leaders of our country, of our education, homes and families, the workforce. They are a target for good and possibly a target for bad. There are no perfect people and no easy answers. There are, however, good principles, good skills, and good direction that we can rely on. Be strong, be courageous, and don't be afraid to stand for what's right. This is what I would tell my children when they leave my home and go out into the world. Well, I need to tell this to myself and to everyone in this room. I'll say it again. Be strong, be courageous, and don't be afraid to stand for what's right. I have every intention of standing here to read these awful, inappropriate books. I don't want to. I don't like it. I've been reading them for a while now, and I hate it. I hate every minute of it. I hate how it feels. I just want to ask everybody, when I read this passage, I just want you to think about the feeling in the room as I read it. I started to unbutton my blouse. No, let me please. I love how he asked permission, all the while taking complete control. I also loved how he didn't hurry each time he loosened a button. He kissed the skin beneath it. When my entire top half was exposed, his tongue explored it, inch by goosebump covered inch. And by the time he unzipped my jeans, slid them off my quaking legs, my panties had soaked through. Took me over top. In that moment, I walked to be in his, and so gave him things I'd always resisted. Oral sex had been offered and received with definite boundaries. That night, we exchanged it with abandon. I opened my legs wide, pushed his face in between, urged his tongue deep inside me, asked his fingers to follow. I let him bring me right to the edge, stopped him. My turn, he was down to boxers by then. I'd been with a grand total of 4 men. I quickly learned to relax my jaw, coax him inside my mouth, and little by little, it was intense, and all I wanted in those moments was to make him feel like the most important man in the world. I do not like reading that. I just want to say, how do you all feel? This film does nothing but bring feelings of immorality and feelings of dark disgust. It's uncomfortable. This is not uplifting for any mind, especially a child's mind. Could any of you sit here and read this to our children or grandchildren? I would hope your answer is no. Do any of you feel better after me reading this? At this time, I ask for positivity to come back into this room. How do I do that? Let's start talking about positivity. Our minds become full of whatever we give it. Children need their minds full of goodness, uplifting, and positive content. Adults need it too. There's no reason to fill their minds with anything less. How can we expect this rising generation to lead this nation for good? Well, I'll tell you how. Fill their minds with good. We as adults need to be courageous and lead by example. Let's all do what we would encourage our children to do. Stand up and stand out. Be courageous. Show our kids that Canyons District wants to fill their minds with all things good. Let's go in a positive direction. Let's work together for the good of the children and their minds. Canyons District can do this. We just need to do it together. We all want to be the best for this rising generation. Sometimes we need to think back to a child, and I wasn't going to share this, but really quick, my little Ellie, she's 7 years old, and I have been sick to my stomach. I'm shaking. I don't like reading this. And she said, Mom, what's wrong with you? And I said, Ellie, I actually have to be really courageous tonight, and I don't want to. She said, well, why do you have to do it? And I said, because I love you and I have to do it. Because it's not right. So think back to a child. Think back to these children. We're adults and we get so into
politics and policy and whatever, but think back to the children. Thank you.
Thank you. Holly Mars and then Jessica Anderson.
Hi, my name is Holly Mars, and I'm a bit of a wreck because I'm reading this smut. And it's really interesting. The girl who actually spoke over the phone about the book Haters, that's the book I was going to talk about. And when I asked my husband if he was going to come support me, he's like, you know what? I don't want to listen to those words come out of your mouth because they're so horrible. The sex scene, I'm going to read it to you because this is what our kids have. And I can't because my eyes are blurry because I'm crying. How sad is that? So she pulled up her top and her breasts flopped out, and I heard them more than felt them. And she reached her hand back and grabbed my dick. It wasn't hard. And pretty soon I couldn't really think about anything else. I heard her open a crinkly little package and felt her put the cool plasticky middle of the condom snugly on the front of my dick like she was shrink wrapping it, and felt her fingernails through the plastic like the legs of a crab fingernailing their way down my dick. And she rose up a little and adjusted her panties and breathed harder and opened her mouth and breath again. And it goes on. And then he says, I don't want to this. Okay. The moment she put me inside her, I mean, the exact moment I came. Fuck, I said, and I curled up like a snail and kept coming about 100 times. And I said, fuck, 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 until she said, shh, and pushed me back down on my back and just lay on top of me. And that was how it happened. No, come on, you're fucking with me. I wish I was. And that's the tame part. Okay. I mean, it's worse in here. You guys are accountable for this. This book was taken off. It was challenged. How in the world did a librarian, how did she put it back on there? Because she didn't think it was bad enough? I mean, seriously, what else in that did I just read? How is that not bad enough? How come I'm here? I've been trying for over a year now. How come I'm standing back here again saying, please take these books out? And then these passed a law saying that we could challenge them, or that I don't even know what all of it. These wonderful ladies know all of the rules. Please take them out. If there's anything at all that they might be bad, we're not book banning. We're just taking pornography. It's not even pornography anymore. Well, I don't know how you define it. It's explicit sexual situations. We're leaving that on our shelves. We're putting it back on. How is that possible? This is at Jordan, Alta, Brighton, Diamond Ridge, and it's obviously okay. I walk down the halls and I see these pictures of these kids smiling and happy, and I'm like, this is where my kids are supposed to be safe. They're supposed to come to school and be safe. They're not safe anymore. And you guys have the power to do something about it. I'm begging you, please stop putting our kids at risk. It's not fair. It's not right. And this is happening on your watch. Just pull the books, pull them, and then we'll deal with let us challenge more than 2. We don't have 15 years to challenge every book. There's hundreds that come in every year. Anyway, I know you guys can do it. Like he said, last thing, we will always be the land of the free as long as we are the home of the brave. Please be brave. Please do the right thing. Thank you.
Thank you. Jessica Anderson.
Hi, my name is Jessica Anderson. I have 3 children that attend schools in Canyon School District. And this would be the 3rd time in past months that I have addressed this issue. My oldest is 11 and at Indian Hills, where this book entitled Burned is on the shelves in our libraries. In summary, this book contains sexual activities, sexual nudity, drug and alcohol use and abuse, profanity and derogatory terms, suicidal ideation, and violence, including child abuse. On page 3, but I do know things really began to spin out of control after my first sex stream. As far as sex streams go, there wasn't much sex, just a collage of very hot kisses and Justin Proud's hands exploring every inch of my body at my fervent invitation. Page 16, I dreamed about Justin last night, dreamed he kissed me and I kissed him back and I let him touch me all over my body and I woke up all hot and blushing. Page 122, and let Derek pull me up onto his lap, and when he kissed me, I full on kissed back. I even let his hands wander. At first I said, no, of course. I really thought I wasn't at all that kind of girl. Guess what? I am. Then he slid his hands around the front of me, lifting my breasts and touching my nipples. I wouldn't let him go under my blouse, but even over my clothes, the way he made my body feel is hard to describe, alive. Page 131. The higher I got, the harder it got to hang on to my jeans. Page 328. We shed our shirts, unzipped our jeans, and would have made love right that minute, or just about then. Page 332. Has anyone ever told you how great you look with your shirt off? And let me just show you all the things in between. There's other things in between. That's just touching the surface on that book. So that's where my 11-year-old goes right now, my sweet, innocent 11-year-old. And in a few years, he'll be at Alta High School where there's books like this, The Lovely Bones. A book that describes the 14-year-old girl who watches her family and friends from heaven after she is brutally raped and murdered. This book contains mild profanity, alternate sexualities, sexual activities, including sexual assault, sexual nudity, violence, alcohol abuse, and suicide commentary. Page 9. My father was the kind of dad who kept a nude photo of you when you were 3 in the downstairs bathroom, but the one that guests use. Page 13. After this, he said, "You're very pretty, Susie." This is the 14-year-old girl speaking. "Thanks," I said, even though he gave me what my friend Clarissa and I had dubbed the skeevies. "Do you have a boyfriend?" "No, Mr. Harvey," I said. I swallowed the rest of my Coke, which was a lot, and said, "I gotta go, Mr. Harvey. This is a cool place, but I have to go." He stood up and did his hunchback number by the 6 dug-in steps that led to the world. "I don't know why you think you're leaving." I talked so that I would not have to take in this knowledge. Mr. Harvey was no character. He made me feel skeevy and icky now that he was blocking the door. "Mr. Harvey, I really have to get home." "Take off your clothes." "What?" "Take off your clothes," Mr. Harvey said. "I want to check that you're still a virgin." "You aren't leaving, Susie. You're mine now." I fought hard. I fought as hard as I could to not let Mr. Harvey hurt me, but hard as I could was not hard enough, not even close. And I was lying down on the ground, in the ground, with him on top of me, panting and sweating, having lost his glasses in the struggle. Mr. Harvey started to press his lips against mine. They were blubbery and wet, and I wanted to scream, but I was too afraid and too exhausted from the fight. I had been kissed once by someone I liked. His name was Ray, and he was an Indian. "Don't, Mr. Harvey," I managed, and I kept saying that one word a lot. "Don't." And I said, "Please," a lot too. Franny told me that almost everyone begged please before dying. "I want you, Susie," he said. "Please," I said. "Don't," I said. Sometimes I combine them. "Please don't," or "Don't, please." It was like insisting that a key works when it doesn't, or yelling, "I've got it, I've got it, I've got it," as a softball goes sailing over you into the stands. "Please don't." But he grew tired of hearing me plead. He reached into the pocket of my parka and balled up the hat my mother had made me, smashing it into my mouth. As he kissed his wet lips down my face and neck, then he began to shove his hands under my shirt. I wept. I began to leave my body. It goes on and on. Where is the policy that prevents these books from getting on the shelves? Policy that allows me to get them out, that's one thing. That's ridiculous. Why are they getting in? Where is that policy?
Thank you. Okay, that concludes our patron comments for this evening. We appreciate everyone that has taken the time and to address the board, and thank you for being here. Next on the agenda is the consent agenda. I ask for a motion, and in making that motion, please read each of the items listed under the consent. Is there a motion?
I'll go ahead and make a motion.
Thank you.
I'd like to make a motion to approve the consent agenda, which includes item A, approval of minutes for October 18th, 2022. Item B, approval of hire and termination reports. Item C, approval of purchasing bids. Item D, approval of student overnight travel. Item E, approval of administrative appointment. Item F, approval of sex education instruction committee membership. Item G, approval of TSSP amendment for Alta View Elementary. Item H, approval of TSSP amendment for Eastmont Middle. Item I, approval of new policy 400.09, breastfeeding/lactation in the workplace. And item J, approval of policy 500.01,
.27, protection of athlete and head injuries.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second that motion.
Thank you. Any discussion to this motion? Seeing none, I'll ask for a vote. All in favor, please say aye. Aye. Any opposed? That motion passes. Thank you. Okay, next on the agenda is item 8A, the fine arts update. And I will turn the time over to Sherry Jorgensen, our the ISD teacher specialist over arts in the district.
Thank you, Superintendent and Board of Education, for this opportunity to showcase the arts in Canyon School District. I'm sure you are aware, however, that visual and performing artists tend to be very passionate about our work, partly because of the emotions involved in what we do. So we will try to be brief and not get too carried away. I want to start by just going over some basic enrollment figures. We can do the next slide, please. Oh, I can do it right here. Awesome. No? The clicker. I can click. Okay. Thank you, Julie. Okay, so this data is from last school year, 21-22. We will be compiling data for the current school year, but some classes, you know, we need to give some time for those enrollments to settle down a little bit. You'll notice in looking at this data that this represents 116% of all of our middle school students and 110% of our high school students enrolled in arts courses. That basically is telling you that we have a lot of students who take more than one arts course. You'll notice also that music and visual art are our highest of the 4 content areas, and that is typical at how it's been in Canyons, and that's also true around most other parts of the country. I want to spend a little bit of time focusing on some of the milestones here in Canyons. Since we've been Canyon School District, in 2013, we created the Alta Marching Band with district support. Thank you for that. They're doing a really great job, as you have already heard. We created in 2014 a partnership with the American West Symphony and the Canyons Youth Symphony that is still taking place today. In 2015, we created the District Theater Warehouse, which has been a valuable resource for our teachers and students at being able to have access to a lot of things at minimal cost to them. We continue to build that and have now started renting to schools and community groups outside of our district, which has been great. In 2020, with the help of the board, we created the Brighton High School Marching Band. And then in 2021, with support of our IT department, we created the Instrument Inventory Database, which is literally instrumental in helping us keep track of all of our equipment and who's rented what and what we have. It provides a lot of valuable data for us in terms of how many instruments we rent, the age of our instruments, repairs that have been done, and things like that, so that we can make more educated decisions in the future about those types of equipment. In 2021, we conducted a student survey for electives, which gave us a lot of valuable information and insight as well. And then, unbeknownst to some of you, possibly, is Hillcrest has started their marching band this year. And they're starting small and trying to do as much as they can at the school level. And that's been great to see. One of the things I would like to focus on now are some of our many teacher awards. We have had 27 teachers from Canyons, 27 art teachers recognized as Teacher of the Year at their respective school since 2012. And 4 of them have placed high amongst the district. In 2018, Lena Wood, who was a band and orchestra teacher at Midvale Middle, was the district first runner-up to Teacher of the Year. Josh Long at Hillcrest High School was the High School Teacher of the Year in 2019. Tracy Raymond, as you know, is our Alta Dance Teacher and District Teacher of the Year. And last year, Skylar Blumel at Mount Jordan, the choir and musical theater teacher, was the district middle school teacher of the year. We've also had in the secondary 7 winners to obtain the Sorensen teacher, the secondary teachers that have gotten the Sorensen Legacy Award for Excellence in Arts Education. You can see them listed there. I won't go through and mention their names, but I would like to mention that this is a statewide award that must be nominated and selected. And we have had a winner every year since its inception, except for the very first year. And mostly because we weren't aware of it. But now that we are, our Canyons teachers are doing great things there. I wanted to include some highlights of our student achievements, but there were so many things. I couldn't figure out a way to make it concise without leaving out some of the important stuff, but we have so much going on. So just suffice it to say that we have a lot of amazing students and teachers in the arts in our district. We continue to support several district events for students, and some of those are listed here. These are ones that we sponsor as a district for students district-wide. Our high school art stock is actually coming up next week on November the 10th. That will be hosted at Hillcrest High School. If any of you are interested in attending, the picture you see here on this slide is from our middle school art fest, which will be held in February. Some of these events are ongoing year-round, like the Canyons Youth Symphony and our POPS organizations, which are the professional outreach programs for the schools that are funded in part by our legislature. There's lots of opportunities in our schools for students to be involved in those types of opportunities with groups such as the Utah Symphony, Ballet West, Utah Opera, lots and lots of things going on there. If you looked at the secondary enrollment data that we linked to this slideshow and the PDFs were in board docs, you will probably notice that's a 3-year comparison, and I'm sure you noticed a dip in 2021 school year. I just want to remind you that that was the year we came back full-time again after being off for several weeks due to COVID. As you're aware, many students took advantage of online learning that particular school year, and some students opted out of what were considered the more exposed electives, I guess, for lack of a better word. But I think you can see by the data from 21-22 that we're rebounding from that now. And I just want to thank the board and the district for maintaining in some cases, some smaller class sizes that particular year so that we could maintain programs, and we are rebounding from that. And very pleased to see that. And again, we will have data for this coming school year and comparisons for the future. As some of you know, I am retiring at the end of the current school year after 43 years in public education. So I want to say thank you to the board and to Canyons District for blessing me with this opportunity to serve in this capacity. Wasn't going to do that, but okay. So, and now I want to introduce to you Mindy Curtis, who's been working alongside of me this year as an art specialist, and she will be talking about our elementary programs.
Hello, thank you for the time. I'm Mindy Curtis, as Sherry introduced me. I'm joining Sherry as an art specialist in instructional supports this year. And I wanted to thank Principal Rowley and Mr. Haney for highlighting the amazing thing that's happening in our secondary schools and especially at Alta for the arts. I'm here to talk about the amazing things that are happening in our elementary schools. I've had the opportunity to be at many of our elementary schools in their arts classrooms so far this year. And I'm here to just give some highlights of that. You'll see on this slide quite a few highlights, but the things I want to specifically point out are that we have the BTS, or the Beverly Taylor Sorensen Arts Learning Program, in 24 of our schools right now, which is an increase, and we've been increasing for many years. And that we have 29 of our 29 schools offering arts in Brain Boosters, which is very exciting. That's every single elementary student getting arts in the course of their elementary time. Also, specifically, we're going to talk a little bit more about arts integration that's happening in our elementary schools. And 5 schools have teachers reporting back to us that they're being given time and afforded time to push in to core classrooms to work with core elementary school teachers on arts integration. So we want to highlight that as well. Some of the highlights of this slide are that our schools are really prioritizing arts in their funding. That we have 5 schools utilizing our district allotted 2 extra hours for arts instruction. So we want to thank the district for that. And schools are also using their TSSA fund for arts instruction. That some of it is instructor salary and some of it is to supplies and instruments as well. Also, this is the 2nd year of our elementary arts teacher teams, and we have 8 teacher teams led by arts teacher leaders, and that is going really, really well. They are collaborating 3 times a year with teachers. So it's supported by Sherry and myself, but it is led by the teachers, and they're utilizing that time and finding it very helpful. So, and also I wanted to highlight that we also have lots of awards received at the elementary school level. And I have one of those award winners. We have had 2 Sorensen Legacy Awards in 2021, Marie Smith and Mindy Vandegraff. And Mindy is here to talk about the arts integration that is happening at her school, Willow Spring. So I'm going to turn the time over to her for that.
Thank you. I have been asked to just highlight a little bit of my school. I am the BTS specialist, as was noted. At our school, I just want to remind you the visual arts integration that's taking place. So arts integration is just an approach where collaboration between the classroom teacher and the arts specialist takes place prior to student instruction. It allows students to better understand their core subjects through an art form. And in our school, it's visual arts. So I'm going to show you just a quick couple of slides, and there is also a video that you have a link to. We won't be watching it now, but you'll be able to look at that if you want to see an actual lesson taking place. So this sample lesson comes from our school with a 2nd grade teacher named JC Dunsley, and then me with as the visual arts specialist. Prior to our teaching, we had time to collaborate, and this is kind of the key to integration. It's an opportunity for us to sit down and figure out the needs of the students, and then use both of our specialties to come together and provide instruction for them. This particular one, like I said on the video that you're welcome to watch later, was an understanding of animal habitats. The students had been studying baby bears in their Wonders curriculum. They also had been learning about, through 2nd grade seed science core, they'd been learning about developing using models and then living things in their habitats. And so as I sat down and visited with Ms. Densley, I had an opportunity to listen to her concerns, things that her students needed, and then I'm able to take the visual arts and pair the 2 of them together. And this is the video that you'll be able to watch later to see. The students were able to they learned about bats, learned about habitats, and they were able to build their own habitat and then create their own bat that actually flew through the room. It's kind of fun to watch. But in the end, these are some of the comments that Ms. Densley had to say. We talked about it afterwards, and she said the students will always remember what they learned about habitats, and this project helped my students better understand the story and the science. That's my job at my elementary school, is to support our teachers. And just as you see the possibilities of arts integration and the way that enhances student learning, it gives them an opportunity to have hands-on learning. They're able to explore the different areas they wouldn't have otherwise, and just learn in a way that they're not able to outside of the art room. I am grateful that I'm able to be at my school. I'm excited about the things that we're doing. This is my 8th year as an arts integrationist at my school. I love our students, and it's fantastic to see the growth that's taken place. And I'm at my school, I have the opportunity to integrate with all of my teachers. Every time there's positive feedback and they're asking for more time, it's really exciting. I encourage you to stop by if you ever have a chance, and just to see more of the possibilities of what we can do within the arts in the elementary level. I'll turn it back over to Sherry.
Okay, so I promised we were going to try to keep it brief and concise. And we're just going to open up to any questions that you might have, any comments, and we'll be available to answer.
Thank you so much. Thank you all for being here and for sharing these great things. Board comments, questions? Mrs. Oakes?
Thanks so much for being here, and you guys are speaking my language with arts integration. I totally love it. I do have a question. Especially knowing, Mindy, that you've been able to push into all the classrooms in Willow Springs. Have you noticed whether or not those teachers, after you've worked with them, tend to feel that they can also on their own do a little bit more of arts integration, or is it still kind of where they feel like they're dependent on you? I'm curious whether or not there's been any sort of crossover effect.
I would say at our school, there over the years, we have about half of our teachers that first jumped on. This is an optional opportunity to collaborate. And so those that have been doing it numerous years are more excited and more willing and are taking more opportunities to provide arts integration in the classroom. Those that are still just starting out, it seems to be a little bit of a learning process. I think over time you would see that would continue, but there has definitely been growth at our school.
Do you see that any of them are utilizing that, particularly with the new Wonders curriculum? Is it lending itself towards that anymore? Or, and that was the other question I had, because I know when we approved that as a board last year that we said specifically, we want to make sure that arts integration is a big piece of Wonders going forward, since the curriculum kind of lends itself for spaces for that.
We'll address that first. Yeah.
We'll just talk about that just briefly. So we did meet last year as an elementary arts team. We met with the ELA team in ISD, and we put together a plan for those arts integrated lessons. We have several of those lessons have been submitted at this point in time, and we're taking the year to kind of vet some of those and make sure that they're quality lessons and put them all in a similar format so that they will be easy for teachers to follow and use. And the plan is to have those links in the maps by the end of this school year for use next year.
Well, and then also follow up to that, I know that there are opportunities for professional development for K-6 teachers throughout the state that focus on arts integration. Are our teachers able to take advantage of that? Do we ever provide tuition for them to be able to participate in that? I would love to see more of our teachers trained to be able to sit through one of those. The ones I've gone to before as a parent in the past, you get to be part of the lesson itself and understand what it feels like as a student. It's really exhilarating, actually.
There are, as you mentioned, lots of opportunities for classroom teachers to attend those kinds of things. It's difficult, especially these last few years with COVID, to have them attend something where a substitute is necessary. And you all understand that and know the difficulties we have there. But some of the ones that are offered in the summertime, we do make those known to teachers. As far as if schools are able to help support them with any kind of registration or cost, that's kind of a site-based decision.
And I guess the follow-up question to that is whether or not our teachers feel like they have permission to be able to utilize the things that they learn in what we have. And I don't know if that's a question more for ISD or for school performance, but I like the principles of arts integration, I think are so powerful. And of course, I think they have to work with their school leadership to make sure that they are teaching the curriculum and hitting those core concepts that are laid out. But do our teachers feel that they have the capacity to be able to use the arts to be able to reinforce the principles that are laid out for them in the classroom?
I don't know that we could answer that very accurately because we haven't really asked the classroom teachers their feelings on that. I do know that I think with Wonders being brand new this year, a lot of their time is probably going to be spent getting more familiar with that particular program so that they can get through that in a timely manner and then maybe free up some of their time there. I am hearing some positive things, however, and certainly we encourage it wherever. I do know that because we have an art specialist of some art form in all of our elementary schools and plus Jordan Valley, that teachers do rely heavily on that specialist, as well they should. But to answer your question as far as how much is actually going on from the classroom teacher initiated, I really don't know the answer to that.
Okay, that might be worth looking at sometime in the future. And obviously not this year because like you said, there's a steep learning curve associated with Wonders. Right. I do have another question, and I have to say, like, being able to participate on the Arts Consortium has been a real treat, and I've learned a lot, and I feel like I see every year things growing and deepening and becoming better. Like the quality of so many things are improving with regard to arts and canyons.
Sherry, knowing your wealth of information in 43 years in your career, I am curious what you feel like would make the biggest difference from us as a board in terms of deepening the quality of arts education in Canyons.
I know if you're talking specifically elementary, we have some fabulous things going on in secondary, and kids can take those courses. The biggest thing in secondary, which is to make sure kids have access to those courses, and whatever that looks like, it could include a number of components. But as far as our elementary, what we're hearing, you'll notice on the slides, and Mindy mentioned this, that we only have so many teachers that are actually pushing into classrooms. Part of that is because a lot of our arts specialists in the elementary are part-time. Most of our BTS specialists are 0.5 FTE. So they don't really have the time to push in. They would like to, but they don't really have the hours for that. And a lot of them have said, if I had additional hours, I'd be happy to do some more push in and things like that. But they really don't have the time because most of their time is spent in actual brain booster classes. And then what prep time that they get, their hour or two a week that they get in terms of prep time within that contract. We only have 4 BTS specialists who are full-time covering 8 schools. We have 3 that are 0.75. So those teachers do have a little extra time, and those are the ones, plus those that are getting the 2 additional hours from the district that are doing most of that extra collaborating. I'm not aware that any of our 0.5 FTEs are doing that. And it's really just a time limitation.
So I know that we tried to address that, was it last year or the year before, and trying to make sure that we had some time available for elementary schools that wanted to, like the additional 5 hours that Lindy mentioned.
Right.
How is that being maxed out?
Yes.
Currently, it's
Yes.
maxed out. And do we have BTS teachers that would like to be able to do the same, or more elementary schools that would like to be able to do the same?
We have had some of our 0.5 FTE teachers tell us they would love to do more of that if they had more time beyond their 20 hours a week. They'd be happy to do more.
Based off of the demand that you're seeing, how many hours additional beyond what we have right now should we? I don't know.
So right now, my understanding is there's 10 additional hours, and schools can apply for up to 2. And we have 5 schools that have applied and been approved for those extra hours. So we are maxed out on that. If I were just to guess off the top of my head, I think we could also do another 10 very easily and get takers for that. And that's not just the arts specialists. I think there are schools that would be interested in that as well.
I do have to say I was really pleased when I saw the school grade come out to see that the schools that are doing this are scoring very, very high. And one of the things that made me really excited was the first thought I thought was certainly arts integration is not hurting them. In fact, it's probably deeply enhancing the experience the children are having, and it's coming out in their test scores. So I as a board member would love to encourage my other board members, if they're willing, I'd like to see that we increase how many hours are available for these push-ins, because I think it's really going to enhance the experience that the elementary students are having, for them to be able to have core content that's so deeply enriched through an art form. So
yeah, one of the things I'd like to remind everyone about is the push-ins are not, you're not taking an extra 20 minutes away from your math lesson or your whatever lesson. You're actually co-teaching that and just reinforcing those concepts in a way that's more engaging for a lot of kids and a way that helps them to remember and do that recall.
And it fits right in with our strategic plan. I'm just going to put it out there. Like hands-on learning, it's definitely, it fits within all of the pieces of high quality learning. And so I feel like as a board, we really should be orienting ourselves to some of these opportunities.
I think it also supports just students' well-being in general because they are engaged. They're having fun. If you noticed on the very first slide, when we were introducing our topic, there's a little picture there that says creativity is intelligence having fun. And that's really what we do. The kids love it. And fun and education do not have to be exclusive of each other at all.
Thank you, Mrs. Neubauer, and then Mr. Wrigley.
Thank you for this presentation. I'm lucky enough that my kids go to Willow Springs and have benefited from Miss Vandergraaf's awesome arts integration. And I have to say, the art nights at Willow Springs, I've never been to a better event at a school ever. This last year's art night was fantastic, and you could see how the arts are being integrated into the curriculum. I actually had all these notes, and Miss Oakes has said some of them, but I wanted to read this aloud. With our strategic initiative under high quality learning, CSD will provide all students access to engaging, challenging, and diverse pathways for successful learning. The very first success criteria is CSD classrooms embed science, technology, engineering, arts, and mathematic principles, interactive learning experiences, arts integration, and cross-curricular hands-on and evidence-based learning. So right there we have in our strategic plan and the first level of the success criteria what we're talking about here. And so my thoughts are, it's amazing to have the Beverly Sorensen Taylor teacher at Willow Springs and at Lone Peak, but we have these other elementary schools that don't have those. Miss Oakes talked about this a little bit, but how we can incentivize teachers to do more of this arts integration with professional development days. If we have these Beverly Taylor Sorensen teachers teaching and helping these teachers see how to integrate it into their English, into their science, because all Canyon's kids should be able to have these opportunities. If you want to talk about how they're retaining their learning, they retain it when they create it and they're using their minds and their creativity in their hands. And so I just, my question to the board is, when we're looking at implementing the strategic plan, we really need to think of how to move this forward to our other elementary schools.
That actually is one of the initiatives that Mindy Curtis and I put in the instructional supports department as one of our proposals, is to set aside some funds and do some budgeting for some professional development for the classroom teachers. So that's part of what we're hoping for the future. Also, the state Beverly Taylor Sorensen Association has, they have the funding now for every elementary school in the state that wants BTS can have that funding. And so we have 5 schools that do not currently, and I have had at least one of those principals reach out to me so far and say they're very interested. We do have some excellent paraprofessionals and technicians in the arts in our elementary schools, and I don't want to discount them at all because they're doing some great things. But the requirement of the arts integration as part of the BTS program just elevates what those folks can do. And some, believe it or not, there's a lot of integration that's taking place in the secondary schools, but it's so subtle you wouldn't even notice it. I know that they highlighted for you tonight the high school musicals that are coming up. And what a better place to get kids involved in public speaking in front of an audience to boost their confidence, teamwork, collaboration. That's all of that takes place in those musicals. Mm-hmm. And again, it's an integrated way of learning that kids don't even realize, and most parents don't even realize what is happening until you see your student just glow and the success, and here, this is where the passion is going to come out. And the benefits of that, are priceless, really. And it's stuff like that is happening all over the place. We just need to make sure all the kids have access to that if that's the direction they want to go or something they would like to try.
That's just so perfect. A wonderful example. The other question I have for you is, what do you think about having ISD in the curriculum map, actually have it built into the curriculum that teachers have some arts integration throughout the year that they need to incorporate into, like the wonders and things like that?
And that is the purpose. That is the purpose of those lessons that we are working on. And we were hoping to maybe do some of that this year. Okay. But then as lessons came in, we realized that we needed to format them so that they were easier for teachers to follow, because some of our outstanding specialists have been submitting those great lessons that we can connect to that Wonders curriculum.
Okay.
But then we just felt like we needed more time to vet those, more time to put in examples, more time to get those formatted all the same. But that will be in place for next school year.
Oh, wonderful.
And as hopefully by then, the teachers will be more familiar with the Wonders curriculum enough that they'll feel like they can add those integrated lessons as part of their teaching.
Awesome. I'm so glad you're doing that. And I just want to say thank you so much. And we're sad that you're retiring.
Thank you. I'm not. Is there anything else?
Yes, I think Mr. Wrigley has some comments and questions.
First off, I've had a blessing of being on this board for 12 years. And the biggest blessing is being able to serve with you. Most of that time I got to serve on the arts committee.
Sure.
You've always been passionate. Your passion for the arts is carried through our district and to our teachers. It's really interesting. Sometimes we never know as teachers the legacy we leave, especially when you get to administrator, because you don't have direct contact a lot of times. But that legacy just grows and grows and grows with each teacher and each teacher they touch. So I think you could walk away from this job knowing that you made a difference. You made a difference in thousands of kids' lives and in thousands of teachers, and made the teachers better for what they did. So
thank you.
We all want to leave a legacy, and I think you have a great one.
And my legacy is continuing because Mindy Vandergraff was one of my students in middle school.
Good.
So
she cloned her.
She was wonderful then, and she's still wonderful. She's just gotten better and better. So it will continue.
In the data that you gave us here,
yes,
it was good to see that the Corner Canyons Orchestra has raised from 142 to 236. Because we've had some real concern on the band and their orchestras.
Yes.
So we are seeing that trend. We also saw a trend go from 180 to 231 at Draper Park. So I'm hoping that trend will continue as we do some differences in their schedules and stuff. But we've had some real issues for a long time in regards to that.
Yeah, I think you're seeing some of those changes because we have had a couple of fantastic teachers at Draper Park the last 6 years. They do have a new teacher this year. And so we kind of need some time to see what's happening there. Yeah.
In the same trends, we see some issues with Eastmont and the other Jordan feeder now, and I worry about the Jordan. Is that a typo or is that really 37 kids in choir?
I'm sorry, what school?
Jordan, Eastmont. He says choir 156, 139, and then 37.
That is not a typo. I remember last year, Ms. Nybauer asked for some longitudinal data that included changes of teachers. And I have been working on that. That's very time consuming to compile, but I'm still working on that for you. Eastmont, the situation with them is it's kind of like most people can relate to. If you change a coach every year, it's very difficult to build a program. And Eastmont Choir has changed teachers. They're on their 4th teacher now in 5 years. And that's made a big difference in the drop. The teacher that is there now, this is her 2nd year there. She's doing a fabulous job. And I'm hoping to see that jump up once again.
Okay, yeah, because I see that and we saw a trend in the band also, but I don't know if that's just because of enrollment at the school.
Well, enrollment at the school is dropping. You can see the total enrollment there. It is dropping at Eastmont, and that does create some issues, especially in terms of scheduling classes. It's harder to do with a small population.
Yeah, overall, the number of arts, when you take the total 123,
sure,
100 and 116, it looks like we're pretty stable in all of our different schools. That's great to see. So thank you.
Thank you. Other comments? Mrs. Schill?
So I just want to add my thanks to Sherry. I want you to know that she has a special place in my heart because she was my oldest daughter's choir teacher many years ago. So anyway, I just really appreciate everything you've done. And I know you're so passionate and it just really means a lot to the board and to me personally. So thank you and best wishes.
Well,
Bless you.
even though I'm retiring, my second passion in life is cleaning and organizing. And I know that sounds really weird, but I have told several of the teachers, don't worry, I'll come take care of your inventory for you. We'll get your library in good shape. Your music library, not your library.
So we may see you.
Yeah, well, you may see me here and there,
Great.
just as a volunteer.
And anything else, Mrs. Oates?
That passion for cleaning is why we have that whole theater warehouse, so.
Yes, and
It's a
if you,
good skill set.
if any of you ever want to come and see it, it is a thing to behold.
It's really fun.
We've had 3 different school districts now and a couple private schools come and look at it.
Yeah.
With the idea of this is maybe something we want to get going. So if you haven't had a chance to come see it yet, it's housed at the former Crescent View Middle School and it is lots of fun.
Sherry literally took her own weekends with her husband to haul costumes back and forth, props and all sorts of things for sets. Like it was a labor of love way above and beyond. So I echo what everyone has said. We are so grateful. We're better for you having been here. And a lot of kids have really benefited from your passion. I'm wondering if it's possible for us as a board to provide direction or any sort of recommendation to the administration to increase those BTS push-in hours, an additional 10 hours. How do the rest of you feel about that?
I think that it's probably something I think the district is aware of, and it sounds like they're working towards increasing that.
Yeah, we'll take that back and
I
see what we
think
can do. I
if
think
you'll
that's a
just
great
give me
idea.
Feedback that
direction.
there is interest
Yep,
in
okay.
what can be done.
You bet.
That was going to be one of my questions is if the school wants to allocate some of their trust lands or TSSP money, they could do so, right? I mean, there's a framework in place. It's just kind of coming up with the funding, correct?
Correct. And yes, we do have, 4 schools that are using their TSSA funds to help support their arts in their building. So that is a possibility. But a lot of it, again, is budgetary things that need to be looked at beyond what I handle.
But to that end, the SCCs received information that is something that they can consider. And I believe the principals too, in their training have been told to look at those as strategies for meeting some of the goals that they set in their plans. So,
and I hope that they look at those in terms of academic growth as a way to help improve their academic growth as opposed to something extra.
Yeah, and they should, because those plans tend to be centered on academic things. So
sure,
and
absolutely.
It's just a way of further solidifying that understanding of how integrating the arts does help with academics. So I just wanted to make a comment on your slide about the milestones.
Okay.
That I think we could credit. Much of the credit for every one of those milestones goes to you and the work that you've done in the district. And I'm so, it's been an honor to work with you, and I'm glad that you're here for the rest of the year and I get to serve on the Arts Consortium Committee so that I can still learn from you and your great team that you have now. And so thank you for providing this update. It's something that is, the board looks forward to every year.
And thank you. Thank you for the opportunity. And we're leaving things in great hands. So
yes, I feel very confident about that. And I hope my fellow board members do as well. So, okay. Thank you very much. Next item on the agenda is the second reading for policy 500.24 student educational travel. I will turn time over to Jeffrey Christensen, Assistant Legal Counsel.
Thanks, President Tingy. So again, this is for second reading, not action requested. If we were to bring it back, my thoughts are it could potentially be on the consent agenda. As you recall from our first reading, we were approached by high school principals as well as some administrators, and looking at the increase that we have in our Utah High School Activities Association sports across the district. And we looked at several provisions in our educational travel policy to broaden the opportunity for students that are part of those new groups: lacrosse, wrestling, and drawing a blank. I can't recall all the new sports because there's quite a few. So volleyball. Yeah, thank you. So in looking at the provisions, we're expanding the overnight travel window to reduce costs, because travel arrangements are more difficult to acquire. In terms of overnight trips, the recommendation was to move that from 15 to 20. Then one of the other recommendations was, prior to the beginning of the school year, each high school will submit a list of eligible groups for travel. That does not include non-curricular clubs, but it would include those groups eligible to travel. And then one of the modifications from our last meeting was to look at developing an every other year a tier 2 travel gross expense cap rule. And how that would work is, once a group exceeds 50% of that total expense cap in 1 year, the next year they would have to stay below 50%. So you could travel up in 1 year to the maximum amount of the approved board fee, but in the next year you have to stay below 50%. So a group could and not have a restriction on where they were traveling within the 48 states, provided they remain under 50% of that cap. And that's outlined in the policy. And then the last element is, we had a multi-school exception developed for smaller groups that might be traveling. And in speaking with principals, they recommended, rather than maintaining that at 3 schools, but reducing it to 2 and increasing the number of students. This has had input from all of our high school principals and has had their review. I'll just note that in the policy, we still maintain that this is the criteria, and then there is an appeal process that any high school principal, if they were to have a situation where this criteria in some situation would not be applicable, they can appeal, and then that's reviewed by a panel. And then the board ultimately makes a decision, but there's a recommendation from the panel. I can respond to questions if there are any, or.
Yes, okay. All right, board questions, comments, Mrs. Nybar, then Mrs. Schill.
I'm really excited about this policy. Changing the number of trips is such a big deal when we've had over 7 new sanctioned sports in the last several years from the UHSAA since this policy was first written, as well as so many other clubs like robotics and other things that have been added. I think I was talking to a principal, I think the number was over 15. So that's pretty amazing. I'm also just very excited about eliminating the mile radius, and instead that was initially created, I think, to help with budget restraints, and we've gone ahead and provided that provision. And then updating some language with the trips. I am interested. I know we have it set up so it can be on the consent agenda at our next meeting. I know a few meetings ago, I believe Ms. Arnold requested permission from President Tingy to go ahead and make an actionable item, and I would be interested in doing that and requesting permission just to go ahead and make a motion to approve this tonight, rather than waiting till our next board meeting for consent. So that's what I'm asking, President.
Okay, let's hear some other comments, and then I'll pose that question to the board. Okay, thank you. Mrs. Schill?
So I just wanted to thank the policy committee, because they worked on that language that we kind of brought up that we thought was a little confusing. And I do think it's much better. So thank you. And I do think this policy is needed, because we do have more sports, and I think we want to give as many students the opportunity to travel as we can. So
So thank you.
Thank you. Other comments or questions? Mrs. Oaks?
I do want to give a shout out to the policy committee. You guys have had a lot this year, and I do appreciate you taking a look at all of these things. There's a lot of issues to consider, and I know it takes a lot of time. So thanks. I think it looks great.
Okay, any other comments? Okay. Oh, Mr. Millerberg.
Just so you'll know, I'm alive and breathing. What they said.
Okay, thank you. Anyone else? Okay, so a request has been made to go ahead and take action on this this policy revision. Is the board, is there any objection to doing that at tonight's meeting? Okay, seeing no objection, then a motion will be allowed.
I will make a motion to adopt the policy 500-24 for student educational travel.
Thank you. Is there a second to the motion?
I'll second it.
Thank you. Any discussion to this motion? Okay, seeing none, I'll call for a vote. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Any opposed? Okay, that motion passes
Thank you.
and the policy revisions are approved.
Thank you, President Tingy and members of the board.
Okay, thank you. Okay, that concludes our business on the agenda for tonight's meeting. So next I will turn time over to Superintendent Robbins and then to Mr. Wilcox for their reports.
Thank you, President. I too just want to express my appreciation to Sherry. When I got here in the spring of 2020 at the start of the pandemic, I remember meeting with her and talking about how we might keep our arts programs actually functioning. And I remember one of the first discussions was to find covers or filters that would go over the instruments. I don't know if y'all remember that conversation, but again, just her dedication and commitment and seeing the positive effect that keeping our programs open and kids continuing to participate and just the value add that that made during that time. I just really appreciate all that she's done and wish her the best in retirement. So thank you.
Thank you. Mr. Wilcox?
Yes, thank you, President Tingy. A couple things. I too want to thank Sherry. I've known her since we started in 2009. So thank you, if you haven't been to the elementary orchestra Munster concert, you should go. I went last year as my boy is one of those in the elementary orchestra, as is my middle school student at Draper Park. So again, big impact on all our kids. So thank you to her and all that she's done. We're in the middle of our open enrollment for our health insurance. So I'm speaking to all the employees out there who have not completed that open enrollment. Please do so. As of this morning, we've only had about 50% complete. The window ends this week. So to all our principals, directors, please remind your employees tomorrow to get that done. Thank you. It's important that everybody goes in line and completes their enrollment. Finally, just a quick update on Peruvian Park. We've made some excellent progress the last couple of weeks. Yesterday, we had 5 trucks of furniture show up there to deliver all the furniture. All the carpet is now down. The whiteboards were on a truck from the Midwest that got in a wreck. We had to go back and make all new whiteboards for us. That got delayed, but they showed up yesterday as well, the second truck. So, they started hanging those yesterday. So we're very good shape moving forward there. Excited to have the ribbon cutting 2 weeks from tomorrow. And then of course there'll be 2 virtual days that the board approved on the 15th and 16th. We'll have a little bit more update on our next meeting, which will be the day before the ribbon cutting, but we're in very good shape there. Big thank you to Hogan
all their subcontractors, all the extra hours they put in, also to Lovely Jukes and her staff for all the patience they've shown and the community there as we get ready to get in there. There is one section that we probably won't have done, and that is the tile on some of the main floor. We'll have to work around some nights and maybe even into the Christmas break to get all of that done, but we'll work around that as we get in there. But I think we know that the most important thing is to get the teachers and students in that new building as soon as possible. So we're excited for that. And that's all I have. Thank you.
Thank you. Okay, for board comments, let's start with Mr. Millerberg.
I guess I'm going to start by apologizing for not making comments when Sherry Jorgensen was speaking. I absolutely love the arts. I love the music. And once upon a time, I was really, really good at it. And I held back because, in all honesty, the most traumatic experience I had in the public education system was 8th grade band at Midvale Junior High School. And that has scarred me from 1964 till now. I mean, literally, it changed my direction as to where I wanted to go in life. And so I appreciate so much that we have quality people teaching music in our school and people that make it fun to be there and understand what it is to be a kid. Second thing I would like to do is, Mrs. President, I would like to make a proposal that in a future study session, we get some instruction on House Bill 374 as a board, so that we will better understand what that law says and how we can make sure that as a school district, we are in compliance. Third thing on my list, I went over to Mid Valley Elementary yesterday for their Halloween parade. It was so much fun. They have a great bunch of students. They have a great bunch of faculty people that are there. And it was pretty subtle, but it was interesting for the parade. Every Halloween parade I've ever been to before, the school doors are open and parents walk in and out of the building very, very freely. The parents were moved to the back of the school on the playground, and the students did the parade inside and then came outside and back through another door back into the school. And I was very impressed with the people at Mid Valley that they preserved the security of the school during the Halloween parade. And the last thing on my list is, Jeff, thank you so much for making Veterans Day a big deal.
Thank you. Mrs. Arnold?
I was gonna mention the same thing Mont mentioned, that we need to do much more looking into this and studying it. I don't personally read porn, but I learned more tonight than I ever wanted to learn. I'm too old for that stuff. I wanted to use the S word, but I'll keep it clean. So I too want to put that on our priority list, ASAP, and see what else we can do. Because I remember when we went through the policy, I couldn't understand, like why we were keeping it to 2 books per person when there could be lots of books out there, and that would take forever to do. And so I do want to review that. Other than that, I too love the arts, and I would really encourage the administration to look at their plans that they have for land trust and TSSP, and see if they can't figure out how to do more integrating of the arts, because the year my students scored the best on the end of year test was the year that we had a dance teacher came in and she danced all of the science, and my kids scored off the scale. They were making clouds with plastic and doing all the clouds and doing all the vocabulary, and they were
for weather, and then they were animals doing all the different animal vocabulary and doing all the different animal movements, and they learned it. They remembered it. It was in their body, and you could see them when they were taking the test, waving the plastic to make the clouds be whatever the clouds need to be. But so I too would like really encourage them to, and not only that, but give them the time. Like we had 45 minutes to an hour once a week to do those lessons. You can't quite do it in 20 to 25 minutes once a week, but to make it a priority and make sure they're integrating the math and the science and the language in there, because when I started teaching, well, it was a few years into teaching, they did multiple intelligence. And I know people say, well, there's no research on multiple intelligence. There's no evidence that it works. However, when I started, my evidence is that most of the kids scored in learning by listening or learning mathematical. And now when I do it, and I still do it every year, I have one kid score in by listening and one kid score by math. And the 20 other 3 kids that are in my classroom, they score by visual, by moving, and by music. So if I have 23 kids scoring that the only way they learn is through doing visuals, moving, and music, obviously if I don't do that, they're not going to grow. And so we really need to look again at why we're staying stagnant and not growing. And that might be a piece of it, because also there's a book called Spark that talks about if you spark your brain, like this school district had all the kids do activities for an hour, and they found that the next 2 hours they could remember almost everything that they were taught. And then they would also do it again right after lunch. They would give them activities, and then the next 2 hours their brain was sparking new brain cells, building new brain cells, and the brain cells would get filled with the new information. So as we're looking at what we're doing in the future, I think we need to look at those arts and see how we're going to implement them into education.
Thank you. Mrs. Oakes?
Thank you. I'm just going to hit the big topic up front. HB 374, I feel the same way as Mont and Clarine. I think Ms. Peterson's suggestion regarding being able to see which books are already being challenged, I don't see why we couldn't do that. I think that would be a good suggestion and would be helpful. I've also, I'm wondering whether or not it would be worthwhile for the policy committee to take a look, and maybe with some assistance from Dan, to see how compliant or how congruent our policy is currently with HB 374. So those would be a couple of my requests. With regard to what I've been able to do the past couple of weeks, I've gone to band concerts, orchestra concerts. I'm actually thrilled to see how well attended they are. So many parents and grandparents and friends that come, and it's a joyful time and experience. The Halloween parades were awesome yesterday. I was so happy. I made it to 2 of the elementaries, Sprucewood and Draper, and I just sat there and I thought, because it still feels really fresh to me, it wasn't that long ago that even that like traditional activity that all of us grew up doing was challenged by COVID, and the kids missed out on so many things. And so to see their lives like moving forward normally, and that they're able to have that kind of exuberant and happy experience, just, it brings me a lot of joy. To Clarine's point and what she was talking about with movement, I do want to remind all of us as a board and district that healthy movement is part of high quality learning in the strategic plan. And outdoor learning is also there. I have been able to have some conversations with Sandy Mayer and Monica Zoltansky recently about the idea of doing an outdoor classroom space in Dimpledale, and to work collaboratively with Sandy City. She's really interested in being able to promote something like that, so that we have a space as a district to be able to take kids and to do science learning and do some things that are hands-on. They recently preserved or have a building over there. It's
now been registered on, as a historical building, and they have possible interest in doing some of those things with us. So that makes me really excited. I would love to be able to see our students learn science in an environment that is really engaging and takes them in a place that's fresh and new and different. So anyway, I want to echo the sentiments of my other board members. I'm so grateful for Sherry and everything that she's done, and I'm really excited to see where the next stage of the strategic plan leads us, and making sure that we're really moving forward on implementation. So thank you, Mr. Wrigley.
Thank you. I'll try to keep it brief. I was really excited. I got to go on a tour of the Peruvian school a couple of days, Peruvian Park, and amazing to see it all come together. I was really worried, but they have done a great job, and your team has done just a great job in pushing things along. For a while there, we didn't have windows even, and we've got that. So I think that's going to be a fantastic school. I also had the opportunity to do the first ever Glacier Hills Memorial parade for Halloween. And that was a hoot. I'm not sure they'll probably do the same format next year, because we start at the kindergartners and walk through every single classroom, all the way up, all the way back down, out the front door, all the way around the block and back. By the time we came back, we were still meeting the fifth graders who were leaving the door. It was crazy. I had them convinced that I was a cowboy. I had several people ask. Yeah, they also commented several times on the police officer who was with us, how real his costume was. So, yeah, we said we can't carry guns, so they couldn't figure out why he was carrying a gun. But anyway, so it was really an exciting thing. We had maybe 7, 8 officers that were there helping in the street. The kids just it was a great activity. Tonight, they touched me on our book presentation about our parents, and I understand where our parents are coming with their pornography and that concern, their sexually explicit information. We are working on that as a committee, the policy committee. We need to continue. As I've knocked on hundreds of doors, I have also people saying, what's that definition and how far it goes? So we really need to come up with a clear, I think we move in that direction. We may need to do like a little bit more. But I've got a lot of people that have been knocking on doors. We're concerned about, where's that line? Where is it? Concerned that we may go too far in the direction. So I think that's the battle we're trying to deal with, is what do we do? So I think the board is working on that. The policy committee is working on that, but it's a real fine thing with our parents, as far as we want to be sure we don't have pornography and explicit stuff, but we also want to be sure that we don't cut out so much stuff that parents are concerned on the other end. So I think we'll continue focusing on that, and I think we'll come up with a solution. I know we will, because it's something that's what the board's concerned about.
Thank you. Mrs. Mybar.
Well, first off, I want to say congratulations to Corner Canyon. The girls volleyball and girls cross country teams earned the Utah Interscholastic Athletic Administrators Association Academic State Championships in 6A. It's a mouthful, but basically those 2 teams had the highest team GPA in Utah. So that's pretty amazing. And also of our varsity cheerleaders, we have 5 national finalists for the academic chair for the nation. So that's pretty exciting also. I also enjoyed going to the Halloween parades yesterday at Willow Springs and got some fun pictures I need to send over to communications. Our FTE music teacher was out there with her speakers, and the kids were singing and dancing as they paraded. So that was pretty fun. I appreciate those parents coming tonight. This is something that has really weighed heavily on my mind. I'm on the policy committee, and last year, as we were discussing, this was my exact concern, is that the books that have the sensitive materials, while we're waiting to see if they get weeded or not, they're still on the shelves. And one thing that I proposed last year that I really feel makes a lot of sense is any books with sensitive materials could be behind the circulation desk, because a lot of those books, we look on Common Sense Media and all these other forums that actually give an age-appropriate rating. The age-appropriate rating is older than the kids that are circulating our library. So if we just put any of those behind the circulation desk
and kids who want to check that out would have to have a signed parent informed consent. We do that currently with movies. So if my kids are going to watch The Outsiders, that's a PG-13 movie that's way tamer than any of these books that were read, I have to sign something saying I'm okay for him to view it. And I think that may be something we could do that wouldn't exhaust our resources and would be quick. We can still do the weeding process, but at least it's behind the circulation desk and the parents would be informed and have a signature there. If their kids were going to check it out, at least there's a level of protection. You know, I do think that those books, you know, are very dangerous. And I think that I know as well as all of you that these phones are really dangerous too. And I'm under no illusion that just by fixing the distribution of those materials in our school library, that there aren't dangerous places for our kids. There are, but we don't have to be the distributors, especially without parents knowing what's going on. And we do have a provision in that policy where parents can go in on the database and say, my kid can't check out these things. But the problem with that is how many of our parents are educated to know to do that? You know, we don't necessarily, although it's there, how many of our parents know that they can do that? And is it easy for our parents who speak different languages? And it just, you know, there's the whole gamut of, you know, I don't know, as a busy mother, I don't know that I would know and have the wherewithal that I can do that on the Destiny database, even though there's a provision for that. So I'd love something like putting it behind the circulation desk. And I believe Mr. Wrigley is kind of thinking about that as well. So I am anxious. I know we have a policy committee meeting on November 10th. I'm really anxious to discuss this further because this is a heavy matter. And I do believe we can do a lot better. And I'm thankful for the parents that came and spoke to us, and I appreciate all of my fellow board members' comments regarding that. As far as the arts go, I already spoke to that. I'm really excited to see that art integration implemented as per our strategic plan. And I think I saw outside the door there, ISD and the arts there talking, and I was just so excited. So can't wait to see how that goes. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Mrs. Schill?
So I attended on October 19th. It was the Education Interim Committee. And they did have a presentation that summarized the Utah Code 53G-10-103, the sensitive instructional materials. And I'm not sure if there's new information in that, but I would request that the policy committee look into that and just make sure that our policy is following along with code, because I do think they had some new definitions in there. So I just wanted to report that. And I do appreciate the parents coming and speaking today also. I also attended, since our last meeting, the South Valley Chamber Women in Business Luncheon, and that was really great. They had a speaker that had written a book, and it was very well attended. So I appreciate the opportunity to attend that. And then also, I just look forward to the calendar committee and just the feedback we got from the board today, and we will get working on that. So thank you.
Great. Thank you. I just wanted to mention that I was able to attend the band bash at Brighton High School, which they invited the 2 feeder middle schools to come and bring their bands and orchestras, and had an amazing concert / bash, I guess is the best word for it. It was held in the gymnasium at Brighton High School. And then at the conclusion of the program, the Brighton High Marching Band did an abbreviation of their field program that they've done this year on the floor of the gym. And it was just great. The gym was full and there was so much energy, and it was really a wonderful event. So I appreciate everyone's, all the schools and the efforts that they make, and in supporting students that thrive with this type of learning experience. And that was a thought I had while I was watching the students, they were coming and going, you know, Butler group would perform while an Albion group was setting up, and then they would switch out to a Brighton group, and the kids were coming and going and moving chairs and moving instruments and things, and they all knew what they were doing, and they just were so excited. It was you know, for them the equivalent of someone on an athletic team playing in a state tournament or something. They were showcased, and they were they'd obviously been rehearsed, not just their musical skills, but also the organizational things and how to behave and where they needed to sit when it wasn't their time to perform. And it was just really a wonderful evening. And so I'm grateful that I was able to have that opportunity to do that. And I look forward to our high school musicals. Every year I try and get to all 5, but it doesn't always work. But I just would encourage anyone out there, not just board members and district folks, but people out in the public. You know what? Go on the school's website, call the office, and see what you need to do to get a ticket to go see a play, because it's just really remarkable, high level quality of entertainment, and I promise you'll feel good if you do it. So anyway, with that, is there anything else? If there's nothing else, then I will adjourn the meeting. Meeting is adjourned.